Victoria Hale stood alone in her glass tower overlooking frozen Chicago, champagne trembling in her hand. Moments earlier, her ex-partner had delivered a devastating blow at the city's most glamorous gala. "You have everything, Victoria, except someone who actually loves you." The words cut deeper than any hostile takeover. She was a billionaire, untouchable, feared. But tonight she realized the empire she built had cost her the one thing money couldn't buy. So she made a decision that shocked everyone, including herself. She offered a contract marriage to her quiet assistant, a struggling single father just trying to survive. Like this video, comment the city you're watching from, and follow my channel. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. Victoria Hale didn't do weakness. She built an empire on steel-edged discipline, ruthless precision, and the ability to see 3 moves ahead while everyone else was still staring at the board. At 38, she controlled a multi-billion-dollar investment firm that could make or break entire markets with a single decision. Politicians took her calls. CEOs feared her silence. The media called her the Ice Empress, and she wore the title like armor. But tonight, at the annual Winter Charity Gala held in the marble-columned ballroom of the Conrad Hotel, that armor had cracked. She stood near the champagne fountain, her silver gown reflecting the chandelier light like a blade. Around her, Chicago's elite mingled in expensive perfume and fake laughter. Cameras flashed. Deals were whispered over lobster canapes. Everything was controlled, predictable, transactional. Then Marcus appeared. Marcus Whitfield. Her ex-partner, both in business and in bed, though neither arrangement had lasted long. He was older now, grayer at the temples, but still sharp in his tailored navy suit, still smug. "Victoria," he said, sliding up beside her with a glass of scotch. "Still making an entrance, I see." She didn't look at him. "Marcus, I thought you'd moved to London." "I'm back for the week, consulting on a merger." He took a sip, watching her with that infuriating half-smile. "You look stunning, as always. Though I have to say, coming alone to these things must be getting old." Victoria's jaw tightened. "I prefer it." "Do you?" He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're still doing exactly what you've always done. Building walls, keeping everyone at arm's length, playing the untouchable queen." "Is there a point to this conversation?" Marcus chuckled, but there was something cruel beneath it. "You know what I realized tonight, Victoria? You have everything. The money, the power, the empire. But you don't have anyone who actually loves you." The words landed like a slap. Victoria turned slowly to face him, her expression ice cold. "And you think you're qualified to lecture me on love?" "I'm not lecturing. I'm observing." He raised his glass in a mock toast. "Enjoy your empire, Victoria. I hope it keeps you warm." He walked away, leaving her standing there with champagne in one hand and fury burning through her veins. But beneath the fury was something worse. Truth. Victoria remained at the gala for another hour because leaving early would have shown weakness. She smiled at the right people, made the appropriate small talk, and deflected questions about her personal life with practiced ease. But Marcus's words echoed in her head, growing louder with each passing minute. A socialite named Margaret cornered her near the silent auction tables, her diamond necklace catching the light as she leaned in conspiratorially. "Victoria, darling, you simply must tell me your secret. How do you manage to look so composed all the time?" "Practice," Victoria said flatly. Margaret laughed like she'd made a joke. "Oh, you're always so mysterious. But seriously, aren't you ever lonely? A woman your age, no husband, no children." "I have a company to run, Margaret. That keeps me plenty occupied." Of course. But surely even you must want someone to share it all with." Margaret's smile was saccharine. "Or perhaps you've already found someone and you're just keeping it quiet." Victoria's grip tightened on her champagne flute. "If you'll excuse me, I see someone I need to speak with." She didn't. She just needed to get away from Margaret's probing questions and pitying eyes. In the bathroom, Victoria stood at the marble sink and stared at her reflection. Flawless makeup, perfectly styled hair, a dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She looked like success personified. She looked completely alone. A younger woman emerged from one of the stalls, adjusting her dress. She couldn't have been more than 25, wearing something borrowed and shoes that pinched. She caught Victoria's eye in the mirror and smiled shyly. "I love your dress," the woman said. "You're Victoria Hale, right? I've read all about you. You're so inspiring." Victoria nodded politely. "Thank you. I'm Sarah. I'm here with my fiancé. He works in tech. We just got engaged last month." She held up her hand, showing off a modest ring. "I know it's not much compared to what you're probably used to, but I love it." "Congratulations," Victoria said, the word tasting like ash. Sarah beamed. "Thank you. I'm so excited. We've been planning the wedding and looking at apartments, and it's all so overwhelming, but in the best way, you know?" She paused, seeming to realize she was rambling. "Sorry, I'm probably boring you. I'm sure you have much more important things to think about." "Not at all," Victoria lied. Sarah smiled again, then left, practically floating on air. Victoria remained at the sink, staring at her reflection and thinking about that cheap ring and the joy in Sarah's eyes. The woman had probably never closed a $1 million deal, had probably never negotiated a hostile takeover or outsmarted a room full of executives. But she had something Victoria didn't, someone who'd chosen her, not for her money or her power or what she could do for them, just her. By midnight, Victoria was alone in her penthouse. The space was immaculate, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the frozen expanse of Lake Michigan, minimalist furniture in white and chrome, art worth more than most people's homes. Everything in its place, everything perfect, and completely, utterly empty. She poured herself a vodka, no ice, and stood by the window. The city glittered below like a constellation she owned but could never touch. Victoria thought about her life with the kind of brutal honesty she usually reserved for quarterly reviews. She was 38 years old. She'd built a fortune that would last several lifetimes. She had influence, respect, fear. What she didn't have was someone to call when something good happened. Someone to share dinner with who wasn't a business contact. Someone who cared whether she came home at night. Her phone sat on the counter, silent. It was always silent unless it was work. Victoria picked it up and scrolled through her contacts. Hundreds of names, lawyers, executives, politicians, investors. Not a single person she could call just to talk. She opened her photos. The last personal photo she'd taken was 8 months ago at a corporate retreat. Before that, nothing for over a year. Her life was appointments and meetings and deals. It was presentations and negotiations and strategic planning. It wasn't living. It was existing in the most expensive way possible. Victoria drained her glass and poured another. She'd made choices. Deliberate ones. She'd chosen career over relationships, power over vulnerability, control over connection. And she'd never regretted those choices. Until tonight. Marcus's voice echoed in her head. "You don't have anyone who actually loves you." The worst part was he was right, and she had no idea how to fix it. Victoria woke the next morning with a headache and a sense of unease she couldn't shake. She went through her usual routine, workout, shower, minimal breakfast, check the markets. But everything felt hollow. At 6:30, she was in her office, reviewing reports that would have waited until Monday. But sitting in her empty penthouse had felt unbearable. Her assistant, Jason Cole, arrived at 7:45 with her usual espresso and a stack of files. "Morning," he said quietly, setting the cup on her desk. Victoria didn't look up. "You're late." "It's 7:45. "Your contract says 7:30. Jason paused, then nodded. "You're right. I apologize." She glanced at him briefly. Jason was 32, though he looked older, worn down by responsibility and lack of sleep. He had dark hair that needed a trim, tired brown eyes, and a jawline that might have been striking if he ever bothered to relax. He wore cheap button-downs and clearance rack slacks, and he moved through the office like a ghost trying not to be noticed. He'd been her assistant for 2 years. Efficient, quiet, forgettable. Exactly how she preferred. But this morning, Victoria found herself actually looking at him. Really looking. Jason had a coffee stain on his collar that he tried to scrub out. His shoes were scuffed. There were dark circles under his eyes that suggested he'd gotten even less sleep than she had. "Anything else?" he asked. Victoria studied him for a moment longer than usual. She didn't know much about Jason's personal life. She didn't make it a habit to know her employees beyond their performance metrics. But she'd overheard things. Water cooler gossip, HR reports. He was a single father. His daughter was 6. His wife had died in a car accident 4 years ago. He worked a second job on weekends to cover medical bills and rent. Pathetic, really, but reliable. "How's your daughter?" she asked. Jason blinked, clearly thrown. "She's fine. Thank you for asking." "What's her name again?" "Emily." "And she's 6? "Yes, ma'am." Jason shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable with the personal questions. "Is there something specific you need?" Victoria waved him off. "No, that'll be all." He nodded and turned to leave. "Actually," Jason stopped, looking back. Victoria hesitated. "Does she like it here, in Chicago?" I think so. She's in first grade. She likes her teacher." "That's good." Victoria turned back to her screen. "Close the door on your way out." He did. And for the rest of the morning, Victoria couldn't stop thinking about Marcus's voice in her head, about that girl Sarah with her cheap ring and genuine happiness, about the emptiness of her penthouse, about Jason Cole, struggling and tired and probably one emergency away from financial ruin, about how desperate people made the best partners for arrangements that required discretion. By Wednesday, the idea had taken root. Victoria sat in her office late that evening, the city lights reflecting off the glass walls, and let herself entertain the impossible. What if she could fix this? Not by actually finding love. She wasn't delusional. Love was chemistry, timing, vulnerability. You couldn't manufacture it. But appearance, image, that she could control. She needed someone presentable, someone who wouldn't embarrass her at events, someone who understood the transactional nature of the arrangement and wouldn't get emotional about it, someone who needed her as much as she needed him. Her eyes drifted to Jason's neat handwriting on a memo he'd left on her desk. His penmanship was careful, almost old-fashioned, the kind of detail-oriented precision she appreciated. Jason Cole, single father, desperate for money, quiet, obedient. Unremarkable enough that no one would question why she'd chosen him, and desperate enough that he wouldn't say no. It was perfect. Almost too perfect. Victoria pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Not a contract, not yet. Just notes, requirements, terms, financial arrangements. She worked until 3 in the morning, refining the proposal until it was airtight. By the time she finished, she had a 17-page outline covering everything from public appearance requirements to termination clauses. It was insane. Completely insane. But it was also the most logical solution to her problem. Victoria pulled out her phone and typed a message. "Jason, my office, tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Don't be late." Okishki bo. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she poured herself another vodka and stared at the outline, wondering if she'd finally lost her mind. Jason arrived at exactly 5:58 a.m. Victoria was already there, of course, standing by the window with her arms crossed. She didn't turn when he entered. "Close the door," she said. He did. "Sit." Jason sat in the chair across from her desk, looking confused and slightly terrified. "Did I do something wrong?" "No." Victoria finally turned to face him. "I have a proposition for you." A proposition?" "Yes." She walked to her desk, leaning against it with her hands braced on the edge. "I'm going to be blunt, Jason. I need a husband." Jason stared at her. "I'm sorry, what?" "Not a real husband. A contractual one, 2 years. Public appearances, social events, the occasional photo op. In exchange, you'll receive a substantial salary, health care for you and your daughter, and a trust fund that will cover her education through college." Jason's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Victoria continued, her voice clinical and precise. "You'll move into my penthouse. We'll maintain separate bedrooms. The relationship will be entirely professional. At the end of 2 years, we divorce quietly, and you walk away financially secure. Your daughter's future will be guaranteed." "This is insane," Jason said. "It's practical." "Why me?" "Because you're competent, discreet, and desperate." Victoria's voice was matter of fact. "You need money. I need credibility. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. You're drowning in debt. I checked. Medical bills from your wife's accident, student loans, credit cards. You're working 2 jobs and you're still barely making rent. Jason's face went pale. You investigated me? I investigate everyone I do business with. This is business, Jason. I'm offering you a way out, $5 million. Plus benefits. Plus Emily's entire future secured. College, graduate school, if she wants it, everything. You can't be serious. I'm offering you $5 million, Jason, plus benefits, plus Emily's future. Victoria leaned forward. How long will it take you to save that working 2 jobs and living paycheck to paycheck? 20 years? 30? And that's assuming nothing else goes wrong. No medical emergencies, no unexpected expenses. His hands were shaking slightly. Why would you do this? I already told you. I need... No, why this? Why not just hire an actor or find someone actually willing to marry you? Victoria's jaw tightened. Because actors talk, and men who would actually marry me want something I'm not willing to give. You're different. You need the money too badly to complicate things with emotions, and you're smart enough to understand that this is the opportunity of a lifetime. Jason stood abruptly, pacing to the window. You're asking me to lie, to everyone, to my daughter. I'm asking you to play a role, for 2 years, in exchange for financial security. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Victoria crossed her arms. You're making it complicated because you're thinking emotionally instead of logically. Strip away the sentiment and look at the facts. You get $5 million, full benefits, and your daughter's future secured. I get a presentable partner for public events and an end to invasive questions about my personal life. Everyone wins. What about Emily? She's 6. She'll think her father found someone. Children adapt, and when it ends, you'll have enough money to provide her with stability and therapy if needed. Jason turned to face her, his expression conflicted. This is wrong. This is pragmatic, and you know you're going to say yes because you can't afford not to. They stared at each other across the office, the morning light just starting to break through the windows. Think about it, Victoria said, her voice softening just slightly. You have 24 hours. But Jason, this offer won't come again, and opportunities like this don't just fall into people's laps. Jason left without another word, his face ashen. Victoria sat back down at her desk and pulled up his file. She'd been thorough in her investigation. Jason Cole had been a good student, graduated with honors from a state school, had planned to get his MBA before his wife got pregnant, had put his dreams on hold to be a father and a husband. Then his wife died, and those dreams died with her. Now he worked as an executive assistant and drove for a rideshare service on weekends. He lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in a building with a broken elevator. Emily slept in the bedroom while Jason took the couch. He was a good father. Everyone who knew him said so. He showed up to parent-teacher conferences, packed healthy lunches, read bedtime stories. He was exactly the kind of man Victoria had always avoided. Soft, emotional, burdened by responsibilities she'd never wanted. But he was also exactly what she needed. Someone real enough to be believable, desperate enough to be controllable, and decent enough that associating with him might actually improve her image. Victoria closed the file and checked her schedule. She had meetings all day, calls with London and Tokyo, a presentation to prepare. But she couldn't focus on any of it. She kept thinking about Jason's face when she told him she'd investigated him. The betrayal in his eyes. It was just business. He'd understand that eventually. Or he wouldn't. Either way, she'd made the offer. Now she just had to wait. Jason didn't sleep that night. He sat at the tiny kitchen table in his cramped apartment, staring at the stack of unpaid bills next to Emily's school permission slips. The faucet dripped. The radiator clanked. Somewhere upstairs, a neighbor's TV blared through the thin walls. Emily was asleep in the other room, the only bedroom. Jason slept on the couch. He thought about Victoria's offer. $5 million, healthcare, Emily's future. It sounded like a fantasy, like something that happened to other people in movies or books, not to exhausted single fathers barely keeping their heads above water. But it also sounded like a trap. Jason wasn't stupid. He knew Victoria Hale's reputation. She was brilliant, ruthless, and completely devoid of empathy. People didn't work for her. They survived her. And now she wanted him to marry her? Even fake, even transactional. It felt wrong. He pulled out his laptop and searched for articles about her. There were thousands. Ice Empress crushes competitor in hostile takeover. Victoria Hale named most powerful woman in finance. The woman who never loses. There were also personal pieces, speculation about her love life or lack thereof, articles about her family, old money from the East Coast that had disowned her when she'd refused to marry the man they'd chosen. She'd built her empire from nothing, with no help and no mercy. She was everything Jason wasn't, cold where he was warm, calculating where he was emotional, powerful where he was powerless. And she was offering him a way out. Jason looked around his apartment, the water-stained ceiling, the furniture from thrift stores, the constant worry about whether he could afford next month's rent. He thought about Emily, who deserved so much better than this, who deserved new shoes that actually fit, who deserved to go to a good school and have nice things, and not worry about money before she was old enough to understand what money even meant. He thought about the medical bills still piling up from Sarah's accident, the student loans he'd been paying for 10 years and barely made a dent in, the credit cards he used to buy groceries because his paycheck never quite stretched far enough. 2 years. He could do anything for 2 years. Jason pulled out his phone, his hands shaking. He typed the message 3 times before he got it right. "I'll do it." He hit send before he could change his mind. 3 seconds later, Victoria replied, "Good. Contract will be ready by Friday. Don't tell anyone. And Jason, you made the right choice." Jason set the phone down and buried his face in his hands. He had no idea if he'd made the right choice, but he'd made the only choice he could afford. The contract was 37 pages long. Jason sat in Victoria's office on Friday afternoon, flipping through clause after clause. Public appearance requirements, minimum 2 events per month, attire to be approved in advance, behavior guidelines that read like a corporate conduct manual, confidentiality agreements with penalties so severe they made his head spin, termination conditions that covered everything from moral clauses to social media usage, financial terms, $200,000 per year salary deposited monthly, full health insurance for him and Emily, $5 million trust fund for Emily, accessible when she turned 18 with provisions for educational expenses before then, a $3 million lump sum payment to Jason upon successful completion of the 2-year term, living arrangements, separate bedrooms in the penthouse, shared common spaces, private space to be respected, weekly household meetings to discuss schedules and requirements. It read like a corporate merger, which Jason supposed it was. "Sign the last page," Victoria said from across the desk. She'd been watching him read, her expression unreadable. Jason picked up the pen. His hand hovered over the line. "This is really happening," he said quietly. "Yes. And after 2 years, we just walk away?" "Exactly." Victoria's tone was flat. "No drama, no complications, clean break. You'll have enough money to start over anywhere you want. Emily will have her future secured, and I'll have fulfilled my objective, which is to appear human." Victoria's smile was bitter. "Apparently that requires a relationship." Jason looked at her, really looked at her. She was beautiful in a sharp, untouchable way, like a sculpture you admired but would never dare to touch. Her suit probably cost more than his car. Her watch could have paid his rent for a year. She was completely out of his league in every measurable way. And yet here she was, paying him to pretend to love her. "What if people find out?" Jason asked. "They won't. The contract has NDAs. Anyone who leaks faces legal and financial consequences." "What if I meet someone in the next 2 years?" Victoria's expression hardened. "Then you keep it quiet. The contract covers that. No public relationships with anyone else during the term. What you do in private is your business, but there can be no appearance of infidelity." "And you?" "The same rules apply to me." Jason nodded slowly. "What about Emily? What do I tell her?" "Tell her we're dating, that we care about each other. Children don't need to know the mechanics of adult relationships. Just make it believable. You want me to lie to my daughter. I want you to give her the life she deserves. Sometimes that requires uncomfortable choices." Victoria leaned back in her chair. "Jason, I'm not asking you to compromise your morals. I'm asking you to be practical. This benefits everyone involved." Jason stared at the contract. $8 million total when you added it all up. Plus benefits. plus security. He thought about Sarah, about what she would have said. She would have been horrified. She would have told him to walk away, that money wasn't worth selling yourself. But Sarah was dead, and Emily was alive and growing and needed things Sarah's idealism couldn't provide. Jason signed. Victoria took the contract, sliding it into a leather portfolio. Good. We'll announce the engagement next week. I've already arranged for movers to pack your apartment. You and Emily will move into the penthouse this weekend. Wait, this weekend? The sooner we establish the narrative, the better. Victoria stood, smoothing her blazer. I've also hired a stylist. She'll be at your apartment tomorrow morning to update your wardrobe. My wardrobe? You can't attend events looking like a clearance rack, Jason. You'll be representing me now. That requires a certain standard. His jaw tightened. Right. Victoria studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. This will work, as long as you follow the rules. And what happens if I don't? Her smile was sharp. Then you lose everything. The money, the benefits, all of it. And I'll make sure every media outlet in the country knows exactly what kind of person you are. Do we understand each other? Jason felt ice in his veins. Perfectly. Good. Victoria extended her hand. Welcome to the arrangement, Jason. He shook it, her grip firm and cold, and wondered what he'd just sold his soul for. Emily didn't understand. We're moving? She asked, standing in the middle of their tiny living room surrounded by boxes on Saturday morning. Jason knelt down to her level. Yeah, sweetheart, we're going to live somewhere new for a little while. Why? Because, Jason hesitated. Because my boss is helping us out. It's temporary. Your boss? Emily frowned. The scary lady? Jason almost smiled. She's not scary. She's just serious. Is she nice? Jason thought about Victoria's cold eyes and sharper words, about the contract and the threats, and the clinical way she'd discussed his financial desperation. She's different, he said carefully. Emily frowned. Do I have to leave my school? No. You'll still go to the same school, I promise. Okay. Emily hugged her stuffed rabbit tighter. Will we have our own rooms? Jason's throat tightened. Emily had never had her own room. She'd been sleeping in his bedroom her entire life, first in a crib, then in a small bed. He'd always meant to get a bigger place, but the money never stretched far enough. Yeah, Em, you'll have your own room. She smiled, and it almost broke him. With a real bed? With a real bed and your own bathroom. Emily's eyes went wide. Really? Really? She threw her arms around him, and Jason held her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. He was doing this for her. He had to keep reminding himself of that. The movers arrived at 10. Jason watched as strangers packed up their entire life into boxes that would fit in a single moving truck. It was depressing how little they had. His phone buzzed. Victoria. The penthouse is ready. Code for the elevator is 4782. Park in space 47 in the garage. Someone will meet you to help with boxes. No pleasantries, no, how are you feeling? Or, is Emily okay? Just logistics. Jason typed back, okay. He drove Emily across town in his beat-up sedan, her chattering filling the silence. She talked about her friend Maya at school, about the art project she was working on, about how she hoped the new place had a bathtub because she wanted to try bubble bath like she'd seen on TV. Jason listened and made appropriate sounds, but his mind was elsewhere. He was moving in with a woman he barely knew, a woman who saw him as a business transaction, a woman who now controlled his entire future. The building was in the most expensive part of downtown, sleek glass and steel, a doorman in a formal uniform, an underground parking garage that looked cleaner than Jason's apartment had ever been. He parked in Space 47 next to a Mercedes and a Tesla. His car looked like it had wandered into the wrong neighborhood. Wow, Emily breathed, staring up at the building. Is this where we're living? For a while, Jason said. They took the elevator to the penthouse floor. Jason punched in the code and the doors opened directly into Victoria's apartment. Emily gasped. The penthouse was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, marble floors, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything white and chrome and pristine. It looked like a place where children were absolutely not allowed. "Daddy," Emily whispered, clutching her rabbit. "This is like a castle." Jason set down their suitcases, feeling completely out of place. Everything here screamed money: the furniture, the art, the view. It was beautiful and sterile and nothing like home. Victoria appeared from the hallway, dressed in a crisp white blouse and black slacks. She looked at Emily with the kind of detached curiosity you'd give a stray cat. "You must be Emily," she said. Emily nodded shyly. "I'm Victoria. You'll be staying in the guest room down the hall. It has its own bathroom." "Thank you," Emily said quietly, displaying the manners Jason had drilled into her. Victoria's gaze shifted to Jason. "Your room is next to hers. Mine is on the opposite end. We won't be in each other's way." "Great," Jason muttered. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. "Is there a problem?" "Nope." "Good." She checked her watch, an expensive piece that probably cost more than Jason's car. "I have a dinner meeting. There's food in the fridge. Help yourselves. The Wi-Fi password is on the refrigerator. Ground rules: no loud noise after 9 p.m., no guests without prior approval. And Emily's bedtime is 8:30 on school nights." Jason blinked. "How do you know her bedtime?" "It was in your employee file. Family information section." Victoria picked up her briefcase. "I'll be back around 10. Try not to break anything." She left without another word. Emily looked up at Jason, her eyes wide. "She's really your boss?" "Yeah. She's scary." Jason exhaled, looking around the pristine penthouse that was now somehow their home. "Yeah, Em, she really is." They spent the afternoon exploring. Emily's room was twice the size of their old apartment's bedroom, painted a soft lavender with a big window overlooking the city. The bed had a white canopy that made Emily squeal with delight. "It's like a princess bed," she said, bouncing on the mattress. Jason helped her unpack her stuffed animals and books, arranging them on shelves that had probably been custom-built and cost more than he wanted to think about. His own room was next door, sleek and modern, with a king-size bed, a desk, and an ensuite bathroom with heated floors. Everything was gray and white, impersonal and hotel-like. It was the nicest room Jason had ever slept in. It felt like a very expensive prison. That evening, they ordered pizza because Jason couldn't figure out Victoria's complicated oven and didn't want to risk breaking anything. They ate on the couch, Emily's feet not quite touching the floor, watching a cartoon on a television that was bigger than their old apartment's entire living room wall. "Do you like it here?" Jason asked. Emily considered the question seriously. "It's pretty, but it doesn't feel like home." "It will, eventually." "Is Miss Victoria going to live here too?" "Yeah, sweetheart, this is her place. We're just staying here for a while." "Why?" Jason struggled to find words. "Because she's helping us. And sometimes when people help each other, they live together for a bit." "Oh." Emily took another bite of pizza. "Is she your girlfriend?" Jason nearly choked. "It's complicated. That's what grown-ups always say when they don't want to explain." He smiled despite himself. "You're too smart for your own good, you know that?" Emily grinned, tomato sauce on her chin. At 8:30, Jason put Emily to bed. She insisted on all her stuffed animals being arranged just right, and on 2 stories instead of 1, because the room is bigger, so we need more stories. Jason read until her eyes started to droop, then kissed her forehead. "Good night, Em." "Night, Daddy." She yawned. "I love you." "I love you too, sweetheart." He left the door cracked open the way she liked it and went back to the living room. The apartment was silent except for the distant hum of the city outside. Jason sat on the couch, probably a designer piece worth thousands, and tried to process what he'd done. He'd moved his daughter into a stranger's home, signed a contract to fake a relationship, agreed to lie to everyone he knew for money. His phone buzzed. His friend Marcus, who he'd known since college. "Hey man, tried calling. You around?" Jason stared at the message. He couldn't tell Marcus the truth. The NDA in the contract was ironclad. He couldn't tell anyone the truth. He typed back, "Sorry, busy weekend. Talk later?" Marcus replied with a thumbs up. Jason set down the phone and dropped his head into his hands. What had he done? Victoria returned at 10:15, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Jason was still on the couch, staring at nothing. "You're still awake," she said, setting down her briefcase. "Couldn't sleep." "Emily?" "Asleep. In her princess room." There was more bitterness in his voice than he'd intended. Victoria crossed her arms. "Having second thoughts?" "Every thought is a second thought at this point." "You signed a contract." "I know." Jason looked at her. "I know what I signed. I know what I agreed to. Doesn't make it less weird." Victoria walked to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of wine. "You'll adjust." "Will I?" People adjust to far more difficult circumstances than luxury accommodations and financial security. She took a sip. "You're being dramatic." "I'm being human, but I guess you wouldn't know much about that." The words were out before Jason could stop them. Victoria's expression went glacial. "Careful. Or what? You'll fire me? Break the contract? Go ahead. Maybe that would be better than this." "Then what? Then giving your daughter the life she deserves? Then selling myself to someone who sees me as a transaction?" They stood there in the kitchen, the tension crackling between them. Victoria set down her wine glass very carefully. "I see. You want me to pretend this is something it's not. To coddle your feelings and make you feel better about a choice you made freely." "I didn't make it freely. You backed me into a corner. I offered you an opportunity. You took it. Those are your choices, Jason, not mine. You investigated me. You knew exactly how desperate I was. And you knew exactly what you were signing up for." Victoria's voice was sharp. "I didn't lie to you. I didn't mislead you. I laid out the terms clearly, and you agreed, so don't stand there acting like I'm the villain in your story." Jason clenched his fists. "You're right. You're absolutely right. This is on me." "Yes, it is. Must be nice never having to question yourself, never having to wonder if you're doing the right thing." Victoria's laugh was hollow. "You think I don't question myself? You think this was an easy decision for me?" "Honestly? Yeah. I think everything's easy for you because you don't actually care about anything except winning." For a moment, Victoria's mask slipped. Jason saw something raw and wounded flash across her face before she locked it down. "Get some sleep," she said coldly. "We have a lot to prepare for next week." She walked away, disappearing into her bedroom at the far end of the penthouse. Jason stood in the kitchen, alone, and wondered how he was going to survive 2 years of this. The engagement announcement hit the media like a bomb. Billionaire Victoria Hale engaged to assistant inside the shocking romance. Ice Empress falls for single dad, a modern fairy tale? Gold digger or true love, Hale's mystery. Fiancé raises eyebrows. Jason's phone exploded with messages from people he hadn't heard from in years. Reporters camped outside the building. Photographers trailed them to Emily's school. It was a nightmare. Victoria, on the other hand, seemed completely unbothered. "This is exactly what we wanted," she said over breakfast one morning, scrolling through headlines on her tablet. "Visibility, intrigue, speculation." Jason stared at his coffee. "They're calling me a gold digger." "Let them. Easy for you to say." Victoria looked up, her expression sharp. "You signed the contract, Jason. You knew what this would be." "I didn't know it would be this." "Then you weren't paying attention." She stood, smoothing her blazer. "Smile at the cameras. Play the part. Or don't. And lose everything." She left him sitting there, alone in the cold, gleaming kitchen. Emily adjusted faster than Jason expected. She loved her new room, painted soft lavender with a window overlooking the city. She loved the big bathtub where she could actually play with bath toys. She loved the doorman, Carlos, who always waved at her and sometimes had lollipops. But she noticed things too, things Jason wished she didn't notice. "Why doesn't Miss Victoria eat with us?" she asked one night. Jason glanced toward the closed door of Victoria's office. "She's busy, sweetheart." "She's always busy." "Yeah." Emily frowned, pushing her pasta around her plate. "Is she your girlfriend?" Jason nearly choked. "It's complicated." "That's what grown-ups say when they don't want to explain." He smiled despite himself. "You're too smart for your own good, you know that?" Emily grinned. "That's what you always say." But later, after Emily was asleep, Jason's smile faded as he looked around the penthouse. This wasn't a home. It was a stage. And he was just playing a role he didn't even know the lines for yet. 2 weeks into the arrangement, Victoria did something unprecedented. She joined them for breakfast. Jason was making scrambled eggs while Emily colored at the kitchen counter when Victoria appeared in the doorway, already dressed for work in a charcoal suit, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun. "Morning," she said stiffly. Emily's head shot up, her eyes wide. "Good morning, Miss Victoria." Jason turned from the stove, spatula in hand, too surprised to speak. Victoria walked to the coffee maker, poured herself a cup, then hesitated before sitting at the counter. She pulled out her tablet like it was a shield. "What are you drawing?" Victoria asked Emily, her tone awkward, like she was reading from a script for the first time. Emily held up her paper. "It's our building, see? That's the doorman, and that's you in the window." Victoria studied the crayon drawing. In it, a stick figure with black hair stood in a window high above the city. "Why am I in the window?" "Because that's where you always are, looking out at the city." Victoria's expression flickered with something Jason couldn't read. "I see." "Do you like it?" Emily asked hopefully. "It's, accurate," Victoria said, which was possibly the most Victoria response possible. But she didn't walk away. She stayed, drinking her coffee while Emily chattered about her art class and the hamster in her classroom named Mr. Whiskers, who kept escaping his cage. Jason plated the eggs and set them in front of both of them. Victoria looked at the plate like she wasn't sure what to do with it. "You don't have to eat it if you don't want to," Jason said. "I didn't say that." Victoria picked up her fork and took a bite, then another. "It's good." "Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not surprised. I don't usually eat breakfast." "You should," Emily said seriously. "It's the most important meal of the day. That's what Daddy always says." Victoria's lips twitched. "Does he?" "Uh-huh. And he makes the best eggs, way better than the cafeteria at school." "I'll take your word for it." They ate in relative silence after that, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Emily kept up a steady stream of conversation, asking Victoria questions about her work, about the building, about whether she'd ever been to the aquarium. "No," Victoria said to that last question. Emily's jaw dropped. "Never?" "Never." "But they have penguins." "So I've heard." "We should go," Emily declared. "All of us. Like a family trip." Victoria's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. Jason saw panic flash across her face, quickly masked. "I'm very busy," Victoria said carefully. "But you have to eat lunch, right? We could go on a Saturday." "Emily, Miss Victoria probably has plans," Jason started. "Actually, Victoria interrupted, and they both looked at her in surprise. "Saturday afternoons are usually free." Emily beamed. Jason stared. "Great," Emily said. "It's a date." Victoria's expression suggested she already regretted this decision, but she nodded. "I suppose it is." After Emily ran off to brush her teeth for school, Jason and Victoria were alone in the kitchen. "You didn't have to agree to that," Jason said quietly. "I know." "So why did you?" Victoria was silent for a moment, staring into her coffee. "Because she asked. And because—" She trailed off. "Because?" "Because no one's ever asked me to go to an aquarium before," Victoria said, so quietly Jason almost missed it. Then she stood abruptly. "I have a meeting at 8. Don't forget you have a fitting this afternoon for the gala on Friday." She left before Jason could respond. But as he cleared the breakfast dishes, he found himself thinking about that brief moment of vulnerability. About the fact that Victoria Hale, billionaire, CEO, had never been to an aquarium because no one had ever asked her. It was a small crack in the armor, but it was a crack nonetheless. The fitting that afternoon was an exercise in humiliation. A woman named Margot swept into the penthouse with 2 assistants and approximately 40 garment bags. She looked Jason up and down like he was a particularly challenging renovation project. She said, circling him. "Yes, I see what we're working with." "Is that good or bad?" Jason asked. "It's a starting point." Margot snapped her fingers, and her assistant sprang into action, draping fabric swatches against Jason's chest, holding up shirts and jackets, arguing about inseam lengths. Victoria said you needed to look presentable for public events, Margot explained, pinning a jacket that cost more than Jason's old monthly rent. That means bespoke suits, tailored shirts, proper shoes, nothing off the rack. What's wrong with off the rack? Margot looked at him like he'd suggested wearing a garbage bag. Everything, darling, everything. Oh. For the next 2 hours, Jason stood like a mannequin while they measured and pinned and debated whether he was more of a navy or charcoal person. Emily thought it was hilarious, sitting on the couch and giggling every time they made him try on another outfit. "You look like a prince, Daddy," she said when he emerged in a tuxedo. "I look ridiculous." "You look expensive," Margot corrected. "There's a difference." Victoria arrived home in the middle of the chaos. She stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene. Jason standing on a platform in a half-pinned suit, fabric everywhere. Emily bouncing on the couch. "How's it going?" Victoria asked Margot. "We're getting there. He's got good shoulders, terrible posture. We'll fix it." "I'm standing right here, Asit," Jason said. "Yes, and slouching," Margot replied. "Shoulders back, chin up. You're engaged to one of the most powerful women in Chicago. Act like it." Jason straightened reflexively, and Victoria's eyebrow arched. "Better," Margot declared. "See? He can be trained." After Margot and her team finally left, Jason collapsed on the couch next to Emily, exhausted. "That was worse than the dentist," he muttered. "But you looked really handsome," Emily said loyally. Victoria was still standing by the window, her expression thoughtful. "The navy suit. That's the one for Friday's gala. Whatever you say." "It's not whatever I say. It's what works." Victoria turned to face him. "These events matter, Jason. The people we'll meet, the impressions we make, all of it matters. For your business, for our arrangement, which benefits both of us." Victoria's tone was sharp. "Or have you forgotten the 8 million reasons you're here?" Jason's jaw tightened. "I haven't forgotten." "Good, because Friday is important. The mayor will be there, several board members, potential investors. I need you to be charming." "Charming, right. Anything else? Should I juggle? Do card tricks?" "Don't be difficult." "I'm not being difficult. I'm asking what you expect from me." Victoria walked closer, her heels clicking on the marble. "I expect you to smile, make small talk, answer questions about our relationship without sounding like you're reciting a script. Can you do that?" "Can you?" Jason shot back. They stared at each other, the tension thick enough to cut. "Miss Victoria," Emily's small voice broke through. "Are you and Daddy fighting?" Victoria's expression softened immediately. "No, sweetheart. We're just discussing." "It sounds like fighting." "Adults sometimes discuss things passionately," Victoria said, in what was possibly her first attempt at kid-friendly explanation. "It doesn't mean we're upset with each other." Emily didn't look convinced, but she nodded. Jason stood. "Come on, Em. Bath time." As he led Emily away, he heard Victoria pour herself a drink. It wasn't even 6 p.m. That night, after Emily was asleep, Jason found Victoria on the terrace. She was still in her work clothes, staring out at the city with a glass of wine in hand. "Can I join you?" he asked from the doorway. Victoria shrugged, which he took as permission. They stood in silence for a few minutes, the cold October air biting at their faces. "I'm not good at this," Victoria said suddenly. "At what?" "At pretending, at being warm, at making people think I'm something I'm not." Jason glanced at her. "You're better at it than you think." "No, I'm not. That's why I needed you." She took a sip of wine. "I can negotiate billion-dollar deals without blinking. I can stare down hostile boards and aggressive competitors. But put me in a room where I'm supposed to be likable, I freeze." "You weren't frozen at breakfast this morning." "That was different. Emily is—" Victoria trailed off. "Is what?" "Disarming. She asks questions like she actually cares about the answers." "That's because she does care." Victoria looked at him. "Why? Why does she care?" "Yes, she barely knows me. I'm just her father's boss who she happens to live with. Why would she care whether I've been to an aquarium?" Jason considered the question. Because that's who Emily is. She cares about people, even people who don't ask for it. That's going to hurt her someday. Probably. But it's also what makes her special. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. My parents tried to train that out of me, caring. They said it was a weakness. Is that what you believe? I used to. Victoria stared into her wine glass. Now I don't know what I believe. Jason wanted to say something comforting, but he didn't know how, so he just stood there, and somehow that felt like enough. I'll try harder, Victoria said. At the gala, at being, whatever it is I'm supposed to be. Just be yourself. Victoria laughed bitterly. That's what everyone's afraid of. Then be a version of yourself that doesn't scare small children and puppies. That got a real smile. Small, but real. I'll see what I can do. Friday arrived with a flurry of preparation that made Jason's head spin. Margot returned with the finished suit and spent an hour making sure everything fit perfectly. A hairstylist came to trim Jason's hair and teach him how to style it properly. Someone even showed up to teach him which fork to use at formal dinners. This is insane, Jason muttered as the etiquette coach demonstrated proper wine glass holding. This is necessary, Victoria corrected from across the room, where she was getting her own hair and makeup done. You represent me now. That comes with expectations. Emily watched all of this with wide eyes, sitting on the couch with her homework spread out. Are you going to a ball? She asked. Like in Cinderella? Something like that, Jason said. Will there be dancing? Victoria and Jason exchanged glances. Possibly, Victoria said carefully. You should dance together, Emily declared. That's what people in love do. The room went silent. Even the stylists paused. We'll see, Jason managed. Emily went back to her math worksheet, oblivious to the tension she'd created. That evening, Jason stood in front of the mirror in his bedroom, barely recognizing himself. The navy suit fit perfectly, making him look taller, more confident than he felt. His hair was styled in a way that probably required product he couldn't pronounce. Even his shoes were new, Italian leather that cost more than his old car payment. He looked like he belonged in Victoria's world. He felt like an imposter. There was a knock on his door. Come in. Victoria entered, and Jason's breath caught. She wore a floor-length emerald gown that looked like it had been designed specifically to make everyone else in the room feel underdressed. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist, her makeup subtle but flawless. She looked like old Hollywood glamour crossed with modern power. She looked untouchable. You clean up well, Victoria said, her tone carefully neutral. So do you. They stood there for a moment, assessing each other like chess opponents. Ready? Victoria asked. No. Good, neither am I. She held out her arm. But we're doing it anyway. Jason took her arm and they walked to the living room where Emily was waiting with the babysitter. Emily gasped when she saw them. You both look like movie stars. Victoria's expression softened. Thank you, sweetheart. Will you take a picture? Emily asked. Please? The babysitter already had her phone out. Victoria and Jason stood together, his hand on her waist, her hand on his chest, both of them smiling for the camera. It looked real. It felt like a performance. Beautiful, the babysitter said, showing Emily the photo. Emily beamed. You guys are so pretty together. In the car, Victoria was silent, checking her phone, reviewing notes for conversations she'd have that night. Jason watched the city blur past and tried to calm his nerves. Don't fidget, Victoria said without looking up. I'm not fidgeting. You're tapping your knee. Stop. Jason stilled his leg. Nervous habit. We'll break it. People will notice. Victoria shut. What? What if I mess this up? She finally looked at him. Then you smile, apologize gracefully, and move on. People mess up all the time. The trick is not letting them see you sweat. Easy for you to say. It's not easy for me. I just make it look easy. Victoria's voice softened slightly. You'll be fine, Jason. Just stay close to me and follow my lead. Like a trained dog. Victoria's lips twitched. Like a partner. There's a difference. The gala was held at the Palmer House, a historic hotel dripping with gold leaf and crystal chandeliers. The ballroom was packed with Chicago's elite, all of them dressed to impress, all of them watching as Victoria Hale entered with her mysterious fiancé. Jason felt every eye in the room turn toward them. "Smile," Victoria murmured. "Look happy to be here. I'm terrified. Smile anyway." He did, and he took Victoria's arm as they descended the grand staircase into the ballroom, cameras flashing, whispers following in their wake. A reporter approached immediately. "Ms. Hale, congratulations on your engagement. Can you tell us how you met?" Victoria's smile was practiced and perfect. "Jason's been my assistant for 2 years. I suppose you could say I finally noticed what was right in front of me. And you, Mr. Cole? What's it like being engaged to one of the most powerful women in business?" Jason's mind went blank. Then he remembered Victoria's advice. Be charming. "Terrifying," he said honestly, "but in the best possible way." The reporter laughed. Victoria's hand tightened on his arm. Approval or warning, he couldn't tell. They made their way through the crowd, Victoria greeting people with practiced ease, introducing Jason with just enough detail to satisfy curiosity without revealing anything real. A silver-haired man in an expensive suit approached. "Victoria, wonderful to see you. Senator Morrison, I'd like you to meet my fiancé, Jason Cole." Jason shook the senator's hand. "Pleasure to meet you, sir." "Likewise. Tell me, how did you manage to convince this one to settle down? I've known Victoria for 10 years, and she's always sworn off marriage." "I guess I'm persistent," Jason said, hoping he sounded charming and not desperate. Victoria laughed, a sound Jason had never heard from her. Light, almost musical, completely fake. "He wore me down," she said, her hand finding Jason's. "Turns out, I'm not as immune to romance as I thought." The senator beamed. "Well, good for you both. It's about time you had someone to share your success with, Victoria." After he walked away, Victoria's smile dropped. "That went well." "How can you tell?" "He believed us. That's all that matters." They were immediately swept into another conversation, then another. Jason met investors, politicians, socialites. Everyone wanted to know about the engagement, about how they fell in love, about wedding plans. Jason stuck to the script Victoria had coached him on. They'd met at work, gotten to know each other slowly, realized they had more in common than they thought. All lies. But delivered with just enough sincerity to be believable. An hour in, Jason needed air. "I'm going to find the bathroom," he told Victoria. "Don't be long. The mayor wants to meet you." Jason made his way through the crowd, finally finding a quiet corridor. He leaned against the wall and exhaled, pulling out his phone. There was a text from Emily. "How's the ball? Did you dance yet?" Jason smiled and typed back. "Not yet. Miss you." "Miss you too. Don't forget to dance." Having second thoughts? Jason looked up. A woman stood a few feet away, holding a champagne glass. She was probably in her 50s, expensively dressed, with sharp eyes that suggested she missed nothing. "Just catching my breath," Jason said carefully. "Understandable, these events are exhausting." She extended her hand. "Caroline Westbrook, I'm an old friend of Victoria's." Jason shook her hand, recognizing the name from Victoria's prep notes. Caroline Westbrook, oil heiress, notorious gossip, not to be trusted. Jason Cole. "Oh, I know who you are. Everyone's talking about you." Caroline's smile was predatory. Victoria's mysterious assistant turned fiancé. Quite the romantic story. "We're very happy. I'm sure you are. Though I have to admit, when I heard the news, I was shocked. Victoria's never been the romantic type." "People change." "Do they?" Caroline sipped her champagne. "Or do they just pretend to?" Jason's stomach tightened. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "Nothing, darling, just making conversation." Caroline's eyes glittered. Though I do find it curious that Victoria suddenly announces an engagement right when she's facing pressure from her board about her image. The timing is convenient. Love doesn't follow a timeline. No, but contracts do. Jason's blood ran cold. "I should get back." Of course, do give Victoria my regards. And Mr. Cole? Caroline's smile sharpened. Welcome to the family. I hope you know what you're getting into. Jason walked away on shaking legs, Caroline's words echoing in his head. She knew, or suspected. Either way, it was dangerous. He found Victoria talking to a group of executives. She caught his eye and excused herself immediately. What's wrong? She asked, steering him toward a corner. Caroline Westbrook just cornered me. She knows. Victoria's expression didn't change, but her grip on his arm tightened. What exactly did she say? Jason repeated the conversation word for word. Victoria was silent for a moment. She's fishing. She doesn't actually know anything. Are you sure? Caroline's been trying to find dirt on me for years. She throws out accusations to see what sticks. The key is not to react. I didn't. I played it off. Good. Victoria smoothed her dress. This was going to happen eventually. People like Caroline thrive on speculation. We just have to be more convincing than her rumors. How? Victoria's gaze swept the ballroom, calculating. We give them something to believe in. Before Jason could ask what she meant, Victoria took his hand and led him to the dance floor. A string quartet was playing something slow and elegant. What are you doing? Jason whispered. Making this real, for them. Victoria placed his hand on her waist, took his other hand in hers. You do know how to dance, don't you? Barely. Then follow my lead, and Jason, smile. Look at me like you're in love. The music started. Victoria moved gracefully, and Jason did his best to keep up. They glided across the floor, surrounded by other couples, but somehow separate from them all. Everyone was watching. You're doing fine, Victoria murmured. I feel like an idiot. You look like a man dancing with his fiancée. That's all that matters. Jason looked down at her. In the soft ballroom light, Victoria's edges seemed less sharp. She looked almost vulnerable, though he knew better than to say so. Why are you really doing this? He asked quietly. Not the fake engagement. This. Right now. Dancing. Because Caroline is watching, and because people believe what they see more than what they hear. So this is a performance. Everything is a performance, Jason. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. The song ended. Applause rippled through the room. Victoria stepped back, and the spell, if there had been one, broke. Come on, she said. The mayor's waiting. They spent the next 2 hours working the room, smiling until Jason's face hurt, shaking hands until his arm ached. Every conversation was a test, every question a trap. But they passed. Again and again. By the time they left, Jason was exhausted. In the car, he leaned his head back against the seat and closed his eyes. You did well, Victoria said. Thanks. I mean it. You were charming, personable, exactly what I needed. Jason opened his eyes. That's all I am to you, isn't it? What you need. Victoria was silent for a long moment. What else would you be? I don't know. A person, maybe? I know you're a person, Jason. Do you? Because sometimes I feel like you see me as a business asset, like Emily's princess bed and Margot's suits and tonight's performance, all just pieces of a strategy. Victoria's jaw tightened. That's not fair, isn't it? I'm paying you $8 million. I'm giving Emily her future. How is that not treating you like a person? Because people aren't transactions. Jason's voice rose. We're not line items on a balance sheet. We're messy and complicated, and we have feelings that don't fit into your contracts. I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you treat this whole thing like a business merger. And maybe that works for you, but I can't just turn off being human. The car pulled up to their building. They sat in silence for a moment. I'm trying, Victoria said quietly, to be better at this, at being present. I know, the breakfast, the aquarium, I see it. Jason's voice softened, but trying isn't the same as succeeding. Then what do you want from me? I don't know, maybe just acknowledgement that this is hard, that pretending every day takes a toll. Victoria looked at him, and for just a moment, her armor cracked. It does. Take a toll. On me too. Yeah? Yes. Pretending I'm someone worthy of love when I know I'm not, that's exhausting. Jason stared at her. Victoria, we should go in. It's late. She got out of the car before Jason could respond, leaving him sitting there with those words echoing in his head. Pretending I'm someone worthy of love when I know I'm not. He'd thought Victoria was ice all the way through. Turns out there was something underneath after all, something broken, and Jason had no idea how to fix it. Upstairs, Emily was asleep on the couch, the babysitter reading a book nearby. They paid her and sent her home, then Jason carried Emily to bed. Daddy? She mumbled, half asleep. Yeah, sweetheart? Did you dance with Miss Victoria? Yeah, we danced. Was it romantic? Jason thought about the performance, the cameras, the calculation behind every step. It was complicated, he said. You always say that. I know. He kissed her forehead. Go back to sleep. When Jason emerged from Emily's room, Victoria was on the terrace despite the cold, still in her gown, staring out at the city. Jason grabbed a blanket and joined her, draping it over her shoulders without a word. Thank you, she said. They stood in silence, the city lights glittering below. I meant what I said, Victoria said eventually, about trying. I don't know how to be what you and Emily need, but I want to learn. Why? Because Emily asked me about penguins, and because you called me out for treating you like an asset, and because... She stopped. Because? Victoria turned to face him, and in the dim terrace light she looked young and uncertain. Because for the first time in my life, I want to be someone other than the Ice Empress, even if I don't know how. Jason's chest tightened. You don't have to figure it out alone. I've always figured everything out alone. Well, you're not alone anymore, not for the next 2 years anyway. Victoria almost smiled. Is that supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be honest. They stood there in the cold, two people trapped in an arrangement neither of them knew how to navigate, both of them trying and failing and trying again. It wasn't perfect, but it was something, and for now, that would have to be enough. Saturday arrived with unseasonable warmth for late October, the kind of day that felt like a gift from a Chicago autumn that was usually cruel. Emily had been awake since 6, too excited about the aquarium to sleep, bouncing around the penthouse in her penguin pajamas, asking every 10 minutes when they were leaving. Not until 10, Jason said for the 5th time. That's when it opens. But what if all the good spots are taken? Em, it's an aquarium. There aren't good spots. The fish don't care where you stand. The penguins might care. Jason couldn't argue with that logic. Victoria emerged from her bedroom at 8:30 wearing jeans and a cashmere sweater, her hair down instead of pulled back. Jason did a double take. He'd never seen her in anything that wasn't a suit or formal wear. You own jeans? He said before he could stop himself. Victoria's expression was dry. I own many things, Jason. I just don't usually have occasion to wear them. You look nice. I look normal. There's a difference. But something in her eyes suggested the compliment had landed anyway. Emily came running into the kitchen and stopped dead. Miss Victoria, you look so different. Is that good or bad? Good. You look like a regular person. Victoria's lips twitched. I'm not sure if that's a compliment. It is, Emily said seriously. Regular people are nice. They took Jason's beat-up sedan because Victoria's driver had the weekend off, and her personal car was a 2-seater sports car that couldn't fit a child's booster seat. Victoria looked distinctly uncomfortable in the passenger seat, eyeing the fast food wrappers Jason had forgotten to throw away. Sorry, he muttered, sweeping them into a bag. I don't usually have passengers. Clearly, but there was no real bite to it. The drive to the aquarium took 20 minutes through Saturday morning traffic. Emily chattered the entire time about ocean animals she'd learned about in school, asking Victoria questions that grew progressively more specific. Do jellyfish have brains? No, they have a basic nerve net instead. What about octopuses? Octopi have 9 brains, 1 central brain and 8 smaller ones in their arms. Emily's eyes went wide. How do you know all that? I read. About octopuses? About everything. Victoria glanced back at Emily. Knowledge is power. The more you know, the better equipped you are to navigate the world. That sounds like something a teacher would say? I'll take that as a compliment. Jason listened to them, something warm spreading through his chest. This was the longest conversation he'd heard Victoria have with Emily that wasn't about logistics or rules. She was actually engaging, answering questions without checking her phone, present in a way she hadn't been before. The aquarium was already crowded when they arrived. Families everywhere, children pressing their faces against glass tanks, the air filled with excited chatter, and the smell of popcorn from the snack bar. Victoria looked overwhelmed immediately. "Too many people?" Jason asked quietly. "I'm fine." "You look like you're about to bolt." "I don't bolt." But her hand clenched around her purse strap. Emily grabbed Victoria's other hand without hesitation. "Come on! The penguins are this way!" And just like that, Victoria was being pulled through the crowd by a 6-year-old who had no concept of personal space or social anxiety. The penguin exhibit was Emily's favorite, as predicted. She stood at the glass for 20 minutes watching them dive and swim, explaining to Victoria which ones were her favorites and why. "That one's Fred. He's the best swimmer. And that's Gladys. She's always stealing fish from the others. And the little one is probably a kid penguin because he keeps falling over." "Gosit." "Chick," Victoria corrected gently. "Baby penguins are called chicks." "Chick," Emily repeated. "Can we have a penguin?" "No," Jason and Victoria said simultaneously. Emily giggled. "You guys sound like real parents when you do that." The comment hung in the air. Jason saw Victoria stiffen, saw her mouth open to correct Emily's assumption, but she didn't. She just said, "Penguins need very specific habitats. They wouldn't be happy in a penthouse." "What about a dog?" "Also no," Victoria said, but there was the faintest hint of amusement in her voice. They moved through the exhibit slowly. The jellyfish room with its ethereal lighting made Emily gasp. The touch tanks let her feel starfish and sea anemones, which she declared were squishy and weird. The shark tunnel had her squealing with delight as the massive creatures swam overhead. Victoria took pictures on her phone. Not many, and somewhat awkwardly, like she wasn't used to documenting moments. But she took them. At one point, Emily insisted they all take a picture together in front of the giant octopus tank. A kind stranger offered to take it. Victoria stood stiffly at first, but Emily wrapped her arms around Victoria's waist and Jason's, pulling them close. "Smile," Emily commanded. They did, and for just a moment they looked like what they were pretending to be. A family. After 2 hours of exhibits, they stopped for lunch at the aquarium cafe. Emily got chicken fingers and fries, Jason got a sandwich that was overpriced and underwhelming, and Victoria ordered a salad that she picked at without much interest. "Not hungry?" Jason asked. "I don't usually eat in public." "Why not?" Victoria shrugged. "Habit? My mother always said eating was something you did privately, that watching someone eat was undignified. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." "That's aristocratic upbringing for you." Emily looked up from her chicken fingers, ranch dressing on her chin. "My daddy says eating together is important. That's when families talk." Victoria glanced at Jason. "Does he?" "Yeah, it was one of the things Sarah insisted on. Family dinners, no phones, actual conversation." Jason's voice softened at the memory. "After she died, I tried to keep it up. Even when it was just me and Em eating mac and cheese in a tiny kitchen, we talked." "About what?" "Everything. Her day, my day, what we were grateful for. Sometimes we'd make up stories or play word games." He smiled. "Sometimes we'd just sit in silence, but we were together." Victoria was quiet, studying her salad like it held the secrets of the universe. "I ate alone most of my childhood. My parents believed children should have separate mealtimes from adults." Emily's eyes went wide. "You ate by yourself?" "Usually with my nanny, but yes, essentially alone." "That's so sad." "I thought it was normal," Victoria said. "I didn't know any different." Jason felt something shift in his understanding of Victoria. All that ice, all those walls, they'd been built by a lonely child eating dinner by herself while her parents hosted parties in another room. "Well, you're eating with us now," Emily declared, "so you're not alone anymore." Victoria's expression did something complicated. No, I suppose I'm not. After lunch, they went to the gift shop because Emily insisted. She wanted everything: stuffed penguins, books about ocean life, a toy submarine. Jason tried to set reasonable limits while mentally calculating how much he could afford. Victoria quietly walked to the register with an armful of items Emily had admired. Before Jason could protest, she'd paid for all of it. You didn't have to do that, Jason said as they left, Emily clutching a giant stuffed octopus she'd named Mr. Tentacles. I wanted to. Victoria to me, Mum. It's not a big deal, Jason. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. Let me buy a stuffed octopus for a child who makes me feel like less of a robot. The admission was so raw, so unexpected, that Jason didn't know how to respond. Thank you, he said finally. You're welcome. They drove home with Emily talking to Mr. Tentacles in the back seat, explaining everything they'd seen. Victoria watched her in the side mirror, her expression unguarded in a way Jason had never seen. She's a good kid, Victoria said quietly. Yeah, she is. You've done well with her, raising her alone. I do my best. Some days that's enough. Some days it isn't. It's enough, Victoria said firmly. She's happy, well-adjusted, kind. That doesn't happen by accident. Jason glanced at her, surprised. Thank you. I'm just stating facts. But there was something softer in her voice, something that sounded almost like affection. Back at the penthouse, Emily insisted on showing Mr. Tentacles his new home, giving him a tour of her room and explaining the house rules. Victoria watched from the doorway, that same complicated expression on her face. You okay? Jason asked. I'm fine, just thinking. About? About how I've never been to an aquarium, never gone to a museum just for fun, never bought a ridiculous stuffed animal because it made someone smile. Victoria leaned against the wall. I built an empire, Jason. I have power and influence and more money than most people dream of. But today, watching Emily explain penguin social structures to you with complete confidence, that felt more significant than any deal I've ever closed. Jason didn't know what to say to that. I think I've been measuring success wrong, Victoria continued. Or maybe just measuring the wrong things. It's not too late to change what you measure. Isn't it? I'm 38. I've spent 20 years building a life that doesn't include this. She gestured vaguely toward Emily's room. Normal things. Simple things. Those 20 years taught you how to be disciplined and focused. That doesn't disappear. You just redirect it. Victoria looked at him. Is that what you did? After your wife died? I didn't have a choice. Emily needed me to be functional, so I figured out how to be functional. Some days I faked it better than others. And now? Now I'm still figuring it out. But I'm not doing it alone anymore. Jason paused. Neither are you. Victoria held his gaze for a long moment. Then Emily called from her room, asking if Victoria wanted to meet all of her other stuffed animals, and the moment passed. But something had shifted between them, something Jason couldn't quite name but could definitely feel. That night, after Emily was asleep, Jason found Victoria on the terrace again. She seemed to gravitate there when she needed to think, drawn to the view of the city she'd conquered but could never quite touch. Thank you for today, Jason said, joining her. Emily had the best time. So did I, Victoria admitted, which is strange. I don't usually enjoy crowds or noise or children asking endless questions about marine life. Emily has that effect on people. It's not just Emily. Victoria turned to face him. It's you, too. The way you parent her, the way you engage with the world. It's so different from everything I know. Different good or different bad? Different necessary. Victoria wrapped her arms around herself despite the relatively warm evening. I've been thinking about what you said, about measuring the wrong things, and I think you're right. Yeah? I spent my whole life trying to prove I was valuable, trying to be so successful that no one could dismiss me or discard me or tell me I wasn't enough. And I achieved that. I'm undeniably successful by every traditional metric. But I'm miserable, Victoria said simply. I wake up every day in a penthouse that feels like a mausoleum. I go to work where everyone fears me but no one knows me. I come home to silence, and I tell myself it's the price of success, that this is just how it has to be. It doesn't have to be. doesn't it? I've built my entire identity around being the Ice Empress. I don't know who I am without that armor. Jason stepped closer. So find out. You've got 2 years in this arrangement. Use them to figure out who Victoria is when she's not performing for a boardroom or a camera. And if there's nothing underneath the armor, there is. I've seen it. Victoria's laugh was bitter. When? When I awkwardly ask Emily about her day? When I buy overpriced stuffed animals? Those are just attempts at mimicking normal behavior. No, they're not. They're you trying, and trying is the most human thing there is. I don't feel human most of the time. I feel like I'm running a very sophisticated program designed to approximate human behavior. Jason grabbed her hand, surprising both of them. Your hand is shaking right now. That's not a program. That's fear. That's vulnerability. That's human. Victoria stared at their joined hands. I don't like being vulnerable. No one does. But it's the only way to connect with people. What if I don't know how? Then you learn. Same way Emily's learning multiplication, and I'm learning to navigate your world of galas and etiquette. Jason squeezed her hand gently. We're all just making it up as we go, Victoria. The difference is some people admit it, and some people pretend they have it all figured out. Victoria was quiet for a long time, her hand still in his. Finally, she said, I want to try to be better at this, not for the arrangement or the appearances or the board. For me. Okay. I don't know if I can. Okay. Victoria looked up at him, frustrated. Stop saying okay. What do you want me to say? That it'll be hard, that I'll probably fail, that changing who you've been for 38 years isn't something you can just decide to do on a Saturday night after a trip to the aquarium. It will be hard, Jason said. You probably will fail sometimes. And no, you can't change overnight. He smiled. But you can start. And starting is the hardest part. Victoria's eyes were bright with tears she'd never let fall. I don't cry. I know. I don't let people see me weak. I know that too. But right now I feel like I might fall apart. Jason pulled her into a hug without thinking. Victoria went rigid immediately. Her body locked up like she'd forgotten how to accept comfort. Then slowly, she relaxed. Her arms came up around him, tentative and unsure. They stood like that for a long time, the city lights glittering around them, two people who'd started as a transaction discovering something that felt suspiciously like real. The following week, everything changed. It started Monday morning when Victoria walked into the kitchen for breakfast and actually sat down without being prompted. She asked Emily about her upcoming art project. She made small talk with Jason about his plans for the day. It was weird, but good weird. Tuesday. Victoria came home early and asked if she could help Emily with her homework. She turned out to be unexpectedly good at explaining math concepts, breaking them down with the same precision she used for business strategies. Wednesday, Victoria suggested they have dinner together. Not separately with Emily while she worked in her office, but all three of them at the table. They talked about Emily's day at school, about a presentation Jason was preparing for Victoria's staff meeting, about a movie Victoria had watched the night before. It felt almost normal, almost like a family. Thursday, the board called an emergency meeting. Victoria left for the office at 6 a.m. looking tense. She came home at midnight looking like she'd gone to war. Jason was still awake, reading on the couch. He looked up when she entered, taking in her disheveled appearance, the exhaustion written across her face. What happened? He asked. Victoria poured herself a scotch. Gerald happened, and the board. And apparently my sudden engagement has raised concerns about my judgment and focus. What kind of concerns? The kind where they're questioning my leadership, suggesting I'm distracted, implying that my personal life is affecting my professional decisions. She drained half the glass. Gerald actually used the phrase feminine emotional instability. Jason's blood boiled. He said, what? He's a 70-year-old man who thinks women belong in the home. This isn't new. Did you fire him? I can't. He's on the board. I can't fire board members. Then what did you do? Victoria smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut. I reminded him that I've grown this company's value by 300% in 5 years, that I've never missed a quarterly target, That my personal life is irrelevant to my professional competence. She finished her drink. Then I told him that if he ever questioned my judgment again, I'd make it my personal mission to ensure his legacy is one of misogyny and failure. How did that go over? Poorly. Hence the midnight arrival time. I've been doing damage control ever since. Victoria set down her glass. They want me to end the engagement. Jason's stomach dropped. What? Not officially, but Patricia Chen suggested that perhaps the relationship was premature and that stepping back might demonstrate maturity and focus. Victoria's laugh was hollow. They think I'm having some kind of midlife crisis, that you're a distraction I'll regret. What did you tell them? That my personal life is none of their concern, that I'm not ending anything, that they can either trust my judgment or find a new CEO. Victoria met his eyes. I may have made things worse. Victoria, I know I should have been diplomatic, should have played politics, but I was so tired of being managed and controlled and told what to do with my own life. She laughed bitterly. The irony isn't lost on me. I created a fake relationship to improve my image, and now it's destroying my credibility. Jason stood and walked to where she stood by the window. What do you want to do? I don't know. If I end it, they win. I look unstable, impulsive. If I continue, they'll keep pushing until they force me out. So fight back. I am fighting back. But I'm exhausted, Jason. I've been fighting my whole life. My parents who wanted to control my marriage. Executives who thought a woman couldn't lead. Competitors who underestimated me. I'm so tired of being in battle mode every single day. Then stop. Victoria looked at him like he'd suggested she jump off the terrace. Stop? Stop fighting. Stop trying to prove yourself to people who will never be satisfied. Stop building your life around what they think. Jason took her hand. You said you wanted to change what you measure. Start by not measuring yourself against their expectations. That's easy to say, harder to do. Everything worth doing is hard. Victoria squeezed his hand. I don't know how to just stop caring what they think. You don't have to stop caring. Just stop letting it control you. They stood there, hands joined, the weight of the board's ultimatum hanging between them. I'm not ending this, Victoria said finally. The engagement, the arrangement, whatever this is, I'm not letting them dictate my choices. Even if it costs you your company, maybe the company isn't worth it if this is the price. Jason stared at her. This was Victoria Hale, who'd built her entire identity around her career, suggesting she might walk away from it. You don't mean that. Don't I? Victoria's eyes were fierce. I spent today being told I'm too emotional, too distracted, too compromised by a relationship. And you know what I realized? They're right. Victoria, I'm distracted. Because for the first time in my life, I have something worth being distracted by. I am emotional. Because I'm learning that emotions aren't weaknesses, they're just part of being alive. And I'm compromised, because I can't go back to being who I was before you and Emily moved in. Jason's heart hammered in his chest. What are you saying? I'm saying that this started as a transaction, a calculated move to fix my image and secure your future. But it's not that anymore. At least not for me. What is it now? Victoria looked at him, vulnerable and terrified and brave all at once. I don't know, but I want to find out, and I don't care what the board thinks about it. Before Jason could respond, his phone rang. Emily's school. At midnight, his blood went cold. Hello? Mr. Cole? This is Riverside Academy's night security. Your daughter is fine, but there's been an incident. What kind of incident? Someone broke into the school, vandalized several classrooms. Emily's name was specifically targeted with some concerning messages. Jason felt the world tilt. What messages? Threats, sir, against her and her family. We've called the police. They'd like to speak with you. Jason's hand shook as he ended the call. Victoria was already grabbing her keys. What happened? She demanded. Someone broke into Emily's school, left threats about her. Victoria's expression went glacial. We're going. Now. They drove to the school in tense silence, arriving to find police cars and security vehicles everywhere. The principal met them at the door, her face grave. Mr. Cole, Miss Hale, Thank you for coming so quickly. Where's my daughter? Jason demanded. Emily's fine. She wasn't here, obviously, but the vandalism was specifically targeting her. The principal led them to Emily's classroom. Someone had spray-painted messages across the walls. Gold digger's kid. Fake family. Go back where you came from. Jason felt sick. Victoria's hand found his, squeezing hard. Who did this? We don't know yet, the principal said, but given the specific nature of the threats and the timing, it's related to our engagement, Victoria finished. Someone who knows about us is targeting Emily. A detective approached. Miss Hale, I need to ask you some questions about potential suspects. Anyone who might have reason to harass you or your family? Half of Chicago's financial sector, Victoria said flatly. I've made a lot of enemies. Anyone specific? Recent conflicts? Victoria's jaw clenched. My board. Competitors. A woman named Caroline Westbrook who's been spreading rumors. She looked at the messages on the wall. But this feels personal, vicious. The detective made notes. We'll need lists of names, security footage from your building, your office, and I'd recommend increased security for Emily, at least until we identify who's responsible. Jason couldn't take his eyes off the spray-painted threats. Someone hated them enough to terrorize a 6-year-old. We're pulling her from school, he said suddenly. Mr. Cole, no, I'm not sending her back here. Not until whoever did this is caught. Victoria nodded. Agreed. And I'm hiring private security. For all of us. The detective continued taking statements, but Jason barely heard. All he could think about was Emily, sleeping peacefully at home, completely unaware that someone wanted to hurt her because of choices he'd made. This was his fault. He'd signed that contract, moved into that penthouse, played along with the charade. And now his daughter was paying the price. They didn't get home until 3 a.m. Jason went straight to Emily's room and sat in the chair beside her bed, watching her sleep. Victoria appeared in the doorway. She's safe, Victoria said quietly. For now. Jason, this is on me. I brought her into this world of yours. I exposed her to your enemies. I put her at risk for money. You put her at risk trying to give her a better life. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? Victoria walked into the room and knelt beside his chair. Listen to me. This is not your fault. Someone out there is twisted enough to target a child. That's on them, not you. I should end this, the contract, the engagement, all of it. Take Emily and disappear before something worse happens. Running won't keep her safe. Whoever did this isn't going to just forget about you. Then what do I do? Victoria's eyes were fierce. We protect her, together. We find out who did this, and we make sure they never threaten our family again. Jason looked at her. Our family? Victoria seemed to realize what she'd said, but she didn't take it back. Yes, our family. Because that's what this is now, whether we planned it or not. Jason wanted to believe her, wanted to think they could weather this storm together. But as he looked at his daughter sleeping peacefully, unaware of the threats spray-painted across her classroom walls, he wondered if love, real or pretend, was enough to protect her from the darkness Victoria's world had brought into their lives. Emily woke up to find Jason asleep in the chair beside her bed, his hand still resting on the edge of her mattress like he'd been holding vigil all night. Which he had. Daddy? She whispered, shaking his shoulder gently. Jason jerked awake, disoriented for a moment before his eyes focused on her. Hey, sweetheart. Morning. Why are you sleeping in my room? Just wanted to be close to you. That okay? Emily nodded, but her eyes were serious in that way kids get when they know something's wrong, but adults won't tell them what. Is something bad happening? Jason's throat tightened. He'd spent the last 3 hours staring at the ceiling trying to figure out how to explain this to a 6-year-old. There was no good way. There was some trouble at your school last night, he said carefully. Someone broke in and made a mess. Nobody was hurt, but we're going to keep you home for a few days while they fix everything. Was it because of me? The question knocked the air from Jason's lungs. What? No, sweetheart. Why would you think that? Emily picked at her blanket. Some kids at school have been saying mean things about you and Miss Victoria. about how we're only living here because you're using her for money. Jason wanted to find whoever put those words in his daughter's head and shake them. Em, look at me. People say mean things sometimes because they're jealous or confused or just plain cruel. None of it is your fault. But is it true? Are you using Miss Victoria? No. The word came out fiercer than he intended. Your father is not using anyone. Miss Victoria and I have an arrangement that helps both of us, and anyone who says different doesn't know what they're talking about. Emily seemed to accept this, but the worry didn't leave her eyes. Can I still go to Maya's birthday party on Saturday? Jason's heart broke a little more. We'll see, okay? Let's just take things one day at a time. Victoria appeared in the doorway, already dressed despite the early hour. Emily, how would you feel about having a special day with just you and me? We could paint or bake or watch movies, whatever you want. Emily's face lit up despite her obvious confusion. Really? Really, your dad needs to handle some boring grown-up things. I thought you and I could have an adventure. After Emily ran off to brush her teeth, Victoria turned to Jason. The security team is here. I need you to brief them on Emily's routines, places you go, people you interact with regularly. You really hired security? I really hired the best security money can buy. There's a man named Marcus downstairs who used to work Secret Service. He'll be our primary contact. Jason ran a hand through his hair. This is insane. This is necessary. Whoever targeted Emily isn't playing games. Do the police have any leads? Not yet, but I have my own people looking into it. Caroline Westbrook is at the top of the list, along with several board members who've been vocal about their disapproval of our engagement. Your board members did this? Probably not directly, but they might have mentioned their concerns to the wrong people, or hired someone to send a message. Victoria's expression was cold fury, barely contained. Either way, I'm going to find out who's responsible. And when I do, they're going to regret ever thinking they could threaten my family. There was that word again, family. Jason wanted to call her on it to ask what she meant, but now wasn't the time. I need to tell her the truth, he said instead. Emily deserves to know what's really happening. She's 6. She's smart. And she already knows something's wrong. If we lie to her, she'll imagine things that are worse than reality. Victoria considered this. What will you tell her? A version of the truth, that someone who doesn't like us very much tried to scare us, that we're being extra careful until the police find them, that she's safe. Is she safe? Jason looked at Victoria's fierce expression, at the determination in her eyes. Yeah, I think she is. The security briefing took 2 hours. Marcus was a wall of a man with intelligent eyes and a calm demeanor that somehow made everything feel more manageable. He asked detailed questions about their routines, potential threats, anyone who'd acted suspiciously in recent weeks. Jason mentioned Caroline Westbrook. Victoria added names from her business rivals. Marcus took notes and promised a comprehensive security plan by end of day. In the meantime, Marcus said, no one leaves the building without checking with me first. Miss Hale, I'll need access to your calendar. Mr. Cole, any trips outside the penthouse need to be pre-approved. And the young lady, Emily, she doesn't go anywhere without at least one of you and one of my team. She's going to hate this, Jason said. She's going to be alive, Victoria replied. That's what matters. After Marcus left, Jason found Victoria in her office, laptop open, expression grim. What are you looking at? Security footage from my building. Someone's been following us. She turned the screen. Grainy footage showed a figure in dark clothing and a baseball cap lingering near their parking garage entrance 3 separate times over the past week. Can you see their face? No. They're careful, but the police have the footage now. They're running it through facial recognition software, checking against known associates of my business rivals. Jason studied the footage. The figure was average height, average build. Could be anyone. This is really happening, he said quietly. Someone's actually stalking us. Yes. And you're not scared? Victoria's laugh was hollow. I'm terrified, but fear doesn't help Emily. Action does. Jason sat down across from her. When did you become a parent? What? You're thinking like a parent, prioritizing her safety over everything else. making decisions based on what she needs instead of what's convenient. Victoria looked uncomfortable. I'm just being practical. No, you're being protective. There's a difference. Don't read into it, Jason. Why not? You already called us your family, twice. Victoria's hand stilled on the keyboard. I was speaking colloquially. Were you? She met his eyes, and Jason saw the war happening behind them, the urge to shut down fighting against something else, something raw and real. I don't know, Victoria admitted finally. A month ago, you were my assistant, and Emily was a complication I hadn't anticipated. Now, when I think about something happening to either of you, I can't breathe. So no, Jason, I don't know what we are, but we're not nothing. Before Jason could respond, his phone rang. The detective. Mr. Cole, we've identified a suspect. Can you and Miss Hale come down to the station? They left Emily with Marcus and 2 other security personnel, both of whom looked like they could bench press a car. Emily seemed more excited about the bodyguards than worried, which Jason chose to take as a good sign. At the police station, the detective led them to a conference room where a photo was displayed on a screen. A man in his late 40s, thinning hair, unremarkable features. This is Derek Richardson, the detective said. He worked for Apex Capital, one of your competitor firms, Ms. Hale. Victoria leaned forward. Worked? He was fired 3 weeks ago. Apparently blamed you personally for his termination. Been making threats on social media, telling anyone who'd listen that you destroyed his career. I've never even met this man. No, but Apex Capital lost several major clients to your firm over the past 6 months. Richardson was their lead acquisition specialist. When those clients left, Apex downsized. Richardson was one of 12 people let go. Jason stared at the photo. So he vandalized a 6-year-old's classroom because he got fired? People do irrational things when they feel wronged. We've got evidence placing him near your daughter's school the night of the break-in. Witness descriptions match. We're bringing him in for questioning now. Where is he? Victoria's voice was ice. We have officers at his apartment, should have him in custody within the hour. I want to press charges, maximum penalties. I want him to understand that threatening children has consequences. The detective nodded. We'll do everything we can, Ms. Hale. In the meantime, I'd recommend maintaining your current security measures. If Richardson has been fixating on you for weeks, there's no guarantee he's working alone. They returned home to find Emily and Victoria's security chief playing Go Fish at the kitchen counter. Emily was winning, based on her delighted giggles. Did you catch the bad guy? She asked when she saw them. Jason crouched to her level. The police are working on it, but yes, they know who did it. Good. Maya's birthday party is on Saturday, and I really want to go. Jason exchanged glances with Victoria. We'll see, Em. Let's just get through the next couple of days first. Emily pouted, but didn't argue. Victoria's phone rang. Her lawyer. She excused herself to take the call while Jason made lunch for Emily. Daddy? Emily said around a mouthful of peanut butter sandwich. Don't talk with your mouth full. She swallowed. Do you love Miss Victoria? Jason nearly dropped the knife. What? You look at her different now. And she looks at you different too. Maya's mom says people in love look at each other like they're the only person in the room. Maya's mom talks about us? All the moms talk about you. They think it's romantic, like a movie. Jason didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's complicated, sweetheart. You always say that when you don't want to answer. Because it's always true. Emily considered this while she ate. Then, I think Miss Victoria is sad. Why do you think that? Because she smiles with her mouth, but not her eyes. Except sometimes with you. And when we went to the aquarium, her eyes smiled too. Jason stared at his daughter, wondering when she'd become so perceptive. You're very observant, Em. I know. I get it from you. She took another bite. I like her. Miss Victoria. She's nice even when she doesn't know how to show it. Yeah, Jason said softly. Yeah, she is. Victoria's call lasted 30 minutes. When she emerged, her expression was thunderous. What happened? Jason asked. The board called an emergency meeting for Monday. They want to discuss my fitness to lead given recent events. They're blaming you for the vandalism. They're using it as an example of how my personal life is creating security risks for the company. Gerald's arguing that my judgment is compromised, that I'm putting business assets at risk by maintaining a high-profile relationship during a vulnerable time. That's insane. That's politics. Victoria poured herself a drink despite it being barely noon. They're going to force me out, not directly, but they'll make it clear that if I don't step down voluntarily, they'll make my life hell until I do. So fight them. I've been fighting them my entire career, Jason. I'm exhausted. Then stop fighting and start burning it down. Victoria looked at him sharply. What? You built that company from nothing. You made them all rich. If they want to force you out over a relationship, then make it cost them. Make it hurt. You're suggesting I go scorched earth on my own board? I'm suggesting you remind them who holds the power. Jason stepped closer. You own 30% of the company. You have relationships with every major client. You know where the bodies are buried. Make them understand that pushing you out would be the biggest mistake they ever made. Victoria's eyes gleamed with something dangerous. That's remarkably ruthless advice coming from you. I'm protective of people I care about, and whether you want to admit it or not, I care about you. The words hung in the air between them. Victoria's hand tightened around her glass. Why? She asked quietly. I've given you every reason not to. I blackmailed you into this arrangement, invaded your privacy, controlled your life. You also protected Emily when she was being bullied. You went to an aquarium even though crowds make you anxious. You're learning to be vulnerable even though it terrifies you. Jason took the glass from her hand and set it down. You're trying, Victoria. That's why I care. Trying isn't the same as succeeding. It's better. Because succeeding means you've stopped growing. Trying means you're still becoming. Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I don't know how to do this. How to be someone worth caring about. You already are. You just don't believe it yet. She kissed him. It wasn't planned or calculated or part of any strategy. It was messy and desperate and real. Victoria's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. Jason's arms wrapped around her waist, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. That was, Victoria started. Not part of the contract, Jason finished. No. So what was it? Victoria laughed shakily. I have no idea, but I've wanted to do it for weeks. Yeah? Yeah. She looked at him, vulnerable and brave. Jason, I know this started as a transaction. I know we had rules and boundaries and a very clear end date, but somewhere along the way, it stopped being fake, Jason said. Yes. For me too. Victoria's smile was tremulous. So what do we do now? I guess we stop pretending and start being honest, with each other and with ourselves. The board will use it against me. Real relationship or fake, they'll say I'm compromised. Let them. You said yourself you're tired of fighting on their terms, so change the terms. Victoria nodded slowly. I need to make some calls, strategy sessions with my lawyer and a few key allies. If I'm going to survive Monday's meeting, I need ammunition. What can I do? Stay with Emily, keep her safe and happy. Let me handle the board. Jason wanted to argue, to insist he could help. But he understood. Victoria needed to fight this battle her way. All he could do was hold down the fort at home. The rest of the week passed in a strange limbo. Richardson was arrested and charged with criminal trespassing, vandalism, and making terroristic threats. His bail was set high enough that he couldn't afford it, which meant he'd stay in jail until trial. Emily, blissfully unaware of most of the drama, spent her days doing schoolwork with a tutor Victoria hired and playing with her security detail, who she'd nicknamed the Avengers. Victoria worked 18-hour days preparing for Monday's board meeting. Jason would find her at 2 a.m. reviewing documents, making notes, rehearsing arguments. You need to sleep, he'd say. I need to win, she'd reply. Friday night, Jason convinced her to take a break. They ordered pizza and watched a cartoon movie with Emily, all three of them squeezed onto the couch. Emily fell asleep halfway through, her head on Victoria's lap. Victoria stroked Emily's hair absently, her eyes on the screen but her mind clearly elsewhere. What are you thinking about? Jason asked quietly. That this feels more real than anything in my entire life. And that terrifies me. Why? Because real things can be lost. Transactions are safe. You know the terms, the duration, the exit strategy. But this? She gestured at Emily sleeping peacefully between them. This is uncharted territory. Yeah, it is. And you're okay with that? The uncertainty? Jason thought about his wife, about how he'd lost her without warning, about how he'd learned that certainty was an illusion anyway. I'm okay with trying, he said. That's all anyone can do. Victoria nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Victoria was dressed by 5 a.m. in a power suit that looked like armor. She'd barely slept, sustained by coffee and determination. You've got this, Jason said as she gathered her briefcase. Do I? Yes, you're Victoria Hale. You've faced down hostile takeovers and market crashes. A board meeting is nothing. A board meeting where they're trying to force me out is something. Then make them regret it. Jason kissed her, quick and fierce. Show them why crossing you was the worst decision they ever made. Victoria's smile was sharp. Now you're speaking my language. She left, and Jason spent the morning anxiously checking his phone for updates. Nothing. Victoria was in the meeting, unreachable. At noon, Emily asked if they could bake cookies. Jason agreed, grateful for the distraction. They were covered in flour and chocolate chips when Jason's phone finally rang. How did it go? He asked without preamble. Victoria's voice was tight. I won, barely. Gerald and 2 others resigned rather than back down. The rest voted to keep me on as CEO with a unanimous confidence vote. That's amazing. It came at a cost. I had to promise to be more transparent about my personal life, to bring you to board functions, to essentially prove that our relationship isn't affecting my judgment. So we're really doing this? Being public about being together? If you're willing, I know it wasn't part of the original contract. Forget the contract, Victoria. Do you want this? Actually want it? There was a long pause. Then, yes. I want this. I want you and Emily and family dinners and aquarium trips and all the messy, complicated things I've spent my life avoiding. Jason's chest felt tight. Then come home. We'll figure out the rest together. I'm on my way. Jason hung up and looked at Emily, who was licking chocolate chips off her fingers. Was that Miss Victoria? She asked. Yeah. Is she okay? She's better than okay. Emily grinned. Good. She should be happy. Happy looks better on her. Jason pulled his daughter into a flour-dusted hug. You're right, Em. It really does. Victoria arrived home an hour later looking exhausted but triumphant. Emily ran to greet her, leaving flowery handprints on Victoria's expensive suit. We made cookies, Emily announced. Want one? I would love one, Victoria said, and she sounded like she meant it. They sat at the kitchen counter eating warm chocolate chip cookies while Emily chattered about her day and Victoria slowly unwound from battle mode. I'm proud of you, Jason said quietly, while Emily ran to get milk. For what? Barely surviving a board meeting? For fighting for what you want instead of just accepting what they tell you you deserve. Victoria looked at him, and her eyes were soft in a way he'd never seen. I learned that from you, from watching you fight for Emily every single day. I'm her father. It's what I'm supposed to do. And that's what makes it remarkable. You show up even when it's hard, even when you're exhausted, even when you have every reason to quit. Victoria took his hand. You make me want to be that kind of person too. You already are. No, but I'm becoming her, and that's because of you. Emily returned with milk for everyone, oblivious to the moment she'd interrupted. They finished their cookies, and Emily insisted on showing Victoria the dance she'd learned from a video. Jason watched Victoria attempt to follow along with Emily's choreography, her movements stiff and self-conscious but genuine. Emily giggled and corrected her form, completely comfortable bossing around a billionaire CEO. And Victoria took the corrections with grace, laughing at herself, trying again. This was real, Jason realized, not the contract or the arrangement or the performance for cameras and boards and gossip columnists. This, right here, Victoria dancing badly in their kitchen while Emily cheered her on. This was real. That night, after Emily was asleep, Jason and Victoria sat on the terrace. It was cold, November settling into Chicago with bitter winds, but neither of them wanted to go inside. "So what happens now?" Victoria asked. "The contract technically has 18 months left. Do we just ignore it?" "I think we throw it out," Jason said. "Start over with something real. I've never done real before." "Neither have I. Not since Sarah." Victoria looked at him. "Are you ready for that? To try again?" "I don't know, but I know I want to try with you. Even though I'm difficult and controlling and terrible at expressing emotions?" "Even though." Jason smiled. "Besides, you're getting better at the emotions thing. Only because you're patient enough to deal with my learning curve. That's what people do when they care about each other. They're patient. They grow together." Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture that would have been unthinkable 2 months ago. "I'm glad you answered my message that morning when I asked you to my office. I'm glad you asked, even if it was the craziest proposition I'd ever heard. It worked out, though." "Yeah," Jason said, wrapping his arm around her. "Yeah, it really did." They sat like that until the cold drove them inside, two people who'd started as a transaction and somehow found something worth more than any contract could define, something that looked a lot like love. The explosion happened 3 days later. Not a literal explosion, though the fallout felt just as destructive. A reporter from a national news outlet published an expose with a headline that made Jason's blood run cold. "The Billionaire's Contract Marriage: Inside Victoria Hale's Fake Engagement Scandal." The article had everything: contract details, bank transfers, email exchanges between Victoria and her lawyers, anonymous quotes from sources close to the situation, describing the arrangement as a calculated business move designed to soften Victoria's image. Someone had leaked the contract. Jason found out when his phone started ringing at 6 in the morning. His old friend Marcus, his cousin in Ohio, people he hadn't spoken to in years, all wanting to know if it was true. He stumbled into the kitchen to find Victoria already there, staring at her laptop with an expression of barely controlled fury. "You've seen it," she said. Not a question. "Yeah." "I'm sorry." Jason laughed bitterly. "You're sorry?" "Victoria, this is a disaster. I know. The whole world knows we've been lying. They know Emily's been living in the middle of a fake relationship. They know everything." "I know." Victoria's voice cracked. "I know, Jason. I'm trying to figure out who leaked it. Does it matter? The damage is done." Emily appeared in the doorway, clutching Mr. Tentacles, her eyes wide. "Why are you yelling?" Jason's anger deflated instantly. "We're not yelling, sweetheart. We're just having a discussion." "It sounds like yelling." Emily's lower lip trembled. "Are you mad at Miss Victoria?" "No, I'm just—" Jason stopped, looking at his daughter's frightened face. "I'm just frustrated, but not at her." Emily didn't look convinced. She ran back to her room, slamming the door. Jason dropped his head into his hands. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." Victoria stood, her movements jerky with tension. "I'm calling my legal team. Whoever leaked this violated multiple NDAs. They'll pay for it. That won't undo the story. No, but it might stop the bleeding." "Victoria, there is no stopping this. We're front-page news. Every outlet in the country is running the story. Our fake engagement is probably trending on social media right now." He was right. Within an hour, they were the #1 trending topic. The reactions were brutal. Some people expressed sympathy, understanding that business deals happened all the time. Most were vicious, calling Victoria a manipulative sociopath and Jason a gold-digging opportunist. Emily was mentioned in nearly every article, described as the innocent child caught in the crossfire of adult deception. Jason's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Victoria's office was in chaos. The board was demanding emergency meetings. Clients were calling, asking for clarification. The media had set up camp outside their building. By noon, Jason had made a decision. "We're leaving," he told Victoria. She looked up from her laptop where she'd been fielding crisis management calls for 3 hours straight. "What?" "Emily and me. We're leaving. This was supposed to give her a better life, not turn her into tabloid fodder." "Jason, no, listen to me. I appreciate everything you've done. The money, the opportunities, all of it. But my daughter is more important than a trust fund. We're going to pack our things and disappear before this gets worse." Running won't make it better. Staying won't either. At least if we leave, we control the narrative. I can tell people we ended it because we wanted privacy, that we're focusing on Emily's well-being. Victoria stood, her expression desperate. You're giving up. I'm protecting my daughter. By leaving? By walking away from everything we've built? We haven't built anything, Victoria. We signed a contract. That's not the same thing. The words hit her like a physical blow. Jason saw her flinch, saw something crack behind her eyes. You don't mean that, she said quietly. Don't I? Because a week ago, you would have agreed with me. A month ago, this was just a business arrangement. Now, suddenly, it's more? Yes, it's more. It's been more for weeks now, and you know it. Wanting it to be more doesn't make it real, Victoria. Not when the foundation was built on lies. Then we tell the truth. We hold a press conference, explain that it started as an arrangement but became genuine. People will understand. No one will understand, Jason interrupted. They'll think we're lying again, that we're just doing damage control, and they'll be right. Victoria's hands shook. So that's it? We're done? I think we have to be, for Emily's sake. What about for our sake? Jason's chest felt tight. I don't know if there is an hour anymore. Not after this. Victoria's phone rang. She ignored it. It rang again. You should get that, yeah, Jason said. Probably your lawyer. I don't care about my lawyer right now. You should, because your company's future is on the line. That's always been more important to you anyway. It was a low blow and Jason knew it, but he was hurt and angry and terrified for his daughter, and striking out felt better than breaking down. Victoria's expression went cold, the Ice Empress returning in self-defense. If that's what you think of me, then maybe you should leave. Fine, fine. They stood there, two people who'd been circling something real for weeks, watching it disintegrate in real time. Jason went to pack. Emily cried when he told her they were leaving. But I don't want to go, she sobbed. I like it here. I like Miss Victoria. I like my room and the doorman and everything. I know, sweetheart, but we can't stay. Why not? How did he explain this to a 6-year-old? That sometimes adults made mistakes that affected innocent people? That sometimes caring about someone wasn't enough to overcome the damage that had been done? Because things are complicated right now, Jason said, hating himself for the non-answer. And we need to go somewhere quiet for a while. Are you and Miss Victoria breaking up? Jason's throat closed. Yeah, Em, we are. But you love her. Sometimes love isn't enough. That's stupid. Jason huffed a sad laugh. Yeah, it really is. He packed their belongings. Not much, since most of what they owned had been left behind in their old apartment, sold or donated when they'd moved in. The fancy clothes Margot had bought him stayed in the closet. He only took what was truly theirs. Victoria didn't come out of her office. Jason told himself it was better this way. Clean break, no long goodbyes. But it felt like tearing off a limb. Marcus, the security chief, helped them load the car. This is a mistake, you know. Probably, but it's mine to make. She loves you, Ms. Hale. I've worked for her for 3 weeks, and I've never seen her like this. The way she looks at you and your daughter, that's real. Real doesn't matter when the whole world thinks you're a liar. The whole world's opinion doesn't matter when you have something worth keeping. Jason appreciated the sentiment, but he'd made up his mind. He buckled Emily into the back seat, where she clutched Mr. Tentacles and refused to look at him. As Jason started the engine, he glanced up at the penthouse windows. Victoria stood at the terrace, watching them leave. Even from this distance, Jason could see the devastation on her face. He pulled out of the garage before he could change his mind. They stayed at a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place that charged by the week and didn't ask questions. It was a stark contrast to the penthouse. Thin walls, rattling air conditioning, questionable stains on the carpet. But it was anonymous, safe from reporters and cameras and the judgment of strangers. Emily barely spoke to him for 2 days. She went through the motions, ate the fast food he brought, watched TV, did her schoolwork, but the light had gone out of her eyes. On the 3rd day, she finally broke. I hate you, Ching, she said, her voice small and broken. Jason looked up from his laptop where he'd been searching for apartments. What? I hate you for making us leave. Miss Victoria was nice to us. She was learning how to be fun, and you ruined it. You always say that lying is bad, but you lied to her too. You said you cared about her, and then you left. It's more complicated than that. No, it's not. You're scared. You're scared of being hurt again like when Mommy died. So you run away instead of staying and fixing things. The accusation hit Jason like a punch to the gut. Because Emily was right. He was terrified of loss, of attachment, of building something only to watch it crumble. So he'd run. Called it protection when really it was cowardice. I'm sorry, Jason said, his voice rough. You're right. I was scared. Then go back. I can't. Why not? Because I don't know if she'd take us back. I don't know if the damage can be fixed. Emily crossed her arms, looking remarkably like Victoria in that moment. You won't know unless you try. That night, Jason couldn't sleep. He lay on the lumpy motel bed, listening to Emily breathe in the bed next to his, and thought about everything they'd lost. Not the money or the penthouse or the fancy clothes. Those were things, replaceable. But Victoria, the way she smiled when Emily asked her questions, the vulnerability in her eyes when she admitted she didn't know how to be vulnerable, the fierce protectiveness she'd shown when Emily was threatened, that was irreplaceable. Jason pulled out his phone and opened his photos. There was the picture from the aquarium, all three of them smiling in front of the octopus tank. Emily between them, arms around both their waists. They looked like a family. They'd felt like a family. Jason had thrown that away because he was scared of what the world thought, because protecting Emily had seemed more important than fighting for what they'd built. But what if Emily needed Victoria as much as Victoria needed them? What if running had been the wrong choice all along? His phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. You should see this. A link to a video. Jason clicked it. Victoria, standing at a podium at what looked like a press conference. Her hair was pulled back severely, her suit immaculate, but her eyes were red-rimmed. I'm here to address the recent allegations about my engagement, she said, her voice steady despite obvious emotion. The reports are accurate. Jason Cole and I entered into a contractual arrangement. I offered him financial compensation in exchange for appearing as my fiancée at public events. It was a business transaction designed to improve my public image. Reporters shouted questions. Victoria held up a hand. However, what started as a contract became something else, something real. I fell in love with Jason and with his daughter, Emily. They showed me what it means to actually live instead of just exist. They taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness and that caring about someone is worth the risk of being hurt. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. I know many of you see me as cold, calculating, as someone incapable of genuine emotion, and until recently, I would have agreed with you. I built walls so high I convinced myself I didn't need anyone, that independence was the same as strength. She looked directly into the camera. I was wrong. Real strength is admitting you need people. Real power is letting yourself be vulnerable. And real success isn't measured in dollars or market share. It's measured in moments. In aquarium trips and chocolate chip cookies and 6-year-olds who ask if jellyfish have brains. Tears streamed down Victoria's face now, but she didn't wipe them away. Jason, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. Sorry for dragging you into my world. Sorry for the contract and the manipulation and all the ways I tried to control something that should have been free. But I'm not sorry for falling in love with you, or for loving Emily, or for finally understanding what matters. She paused, composing herself. I'm stepping down as CEO of my company. Not because the board demanded it, but because I'm choosing something else, something more important. I'm choosing the chance to be the person you and Emily deserve. Even if I never get that chance, even if you're gone for good, you've changed me, and I'll always be grateful for that. The video ended. Jason stared at his phone, his heart pounding. Emily sat up in bed. Was that Miss Victoria? Yeah. She's crying. Yeah, she is. Are you going to go to her? Jason looked at his daughter, at her hopeful expression, and made a decision that terrified him. Yeah, I am. They drove back to the penthouse at midnight. Jason had no idea if Victoria would even be there, or if she'd want to see him after he'd walked away. But he had to try. The doorman recognized them immediately. Mr. Cole, Ms. Hale is upstairs. Is she alone? Yes, sir. Has been since you left. Jason and Emily took the elevator up, Emily clutching his hand tightly. When they reached the penthouse, Jason hesitated before entering the code. What if she's mad? Emily whispered. Then we apologize. And we keep apologizing until she listens. The door opened into darkness. Jason almost thought Victoria wasn't home until he saw her silhouette on the terrace, exactly where he'd known she'd be. Stay here, he told Emily. Let me talk to her first. Emily nodded, settling onto the couch with Mr. Tentacles. Jason walked to the terrace. Victoria didn't turn when he opened the door, though she must have heard it. I watched your press conference, Jason said. Then you know I meant every word. I do. And I'm sorry I left. You were protecting Emily. I understand that. I was also being a coward, running instead of fighting for what we had. Victoria finally turned to face him. Her eyes were puffy from crying, her face bare of makeup. She'd never looked more beautiful. What we had was built on a lie, she said, echoing his own words back at him. The foundation was a lie, but what we built on top of it was real. Was it? Or was I just another person you felt obligated to take care of? Is that really what you think? I don't know what to think anymore, Jason. You left. After everything. After I defended us to my board. After I chose you over my company. You left. I know, and I was wrong. Jason stepped closer. I was so focused on protecting Emily from getting hurt that I didn't realize leaving would hurt her more. She needs you, Victoria, and so do I. Need isn't the same as love. No, but I love you too. Victoria's breath caught. What? I love you. Your intensity and your brilliance and the way you're trying so hard to be someone you think you're supposed to be instead of just being yourself. I love that you bought Emily a giant octopus and learned to dance badly in our kitchen. I love that you're terrified of failing, but you try anyway. Jason, I know it's complicated. I know the world thinks we're liars. I know it's going to be hard. Jason took her hands. But I don't care. I'd rather have hard and real than easy and empty. Victoria was crying again, but this time she was smiling too. I stepped down from my company. I know, that was insane, but I know. But I realized something. I spent 20 years building an empire because I thought that was the only way to prove I mattered, that I was enough. But you and Emily, you make me feel like I matter just by being myself. That's worth more than any company. You can have both. The company and us. No, I can't. Not the way I was running it. Victoria squeezed his hands. I'm staying on as a consultant, major decisions only, but someone else is running day-to-day operations. I'm finally putting my life before my work. What will you do instead? I don't know yet. Maybe philanthropy, maybe teaching, maybe just being present for the people I love. She looked at him. I'm choosing us, Jason. If you'll have me. Always. Jason pulled her close, kissing her like he should have weeks ago, like he'd wanted to since that first breakfast when she'd awkwardly asked Emily about her drawings. When they finally broke apart, Emily was standing in the doorway, grinning. Does this mean we're staying? She asked. Victoria laughed, wiping her tears. If you want to. If you'll forgive me for being so bad at this whole family thing. Emily ran to them, wrapping her arms around both their waists. You're getting better at it. And Daddy says practice makes perfect. I don't know about perfect, Victoria said, kneeling to Emily's level, but I promise to keep trying, to keep learning, to be the person you both deserve. You already are, Emily said seriously. You just have to believe it. Victoria pulled Emily into a hug, then looked up at Jason over her head. When did she get so wise? She's 6 going on 30, Jason said. It's terrifying. They moved back in the next day. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Because the penthouse had stopped being Victoria's space and become their home. The media frenzy continued for weeks. Reporters camped outside. Tabloids ran wild speculation. Social media had opinions ranging from sympathetic to vicious. But inside the penthouse, they built something real. Victoria learned to cook, badly at first, but improving with practice. Emily taught her how to braid hair, an exercise in patience that Victoria approached with the same focus she'd once brought to corporate mergers. Jason helped Victoria navigate the strange world of being present, of not checking her phone during dinner, of measuring success in laughter instead of profits. It wasn't smooth. Victoria still struggled with vulnerability, with letting herself be seen without armor. Jason still worried about money despite having more than he'd ever imagined. Emily still had nightmares sometimes about being separated from both of them, but they worked through it, together. 3 months after the scandal broke, Victoria made a surprise announcement. She was starting a foundation focused on single parents facing financial hardship, scholarships for their children, support services, legal aid, everything she wished had existed when Jason was drowning in debt. "I'm using my empire for something that actually matters," she told Jason. "Helping people like you. People who deserve better than being forced into impossible choices." Jason kissed her. "I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of me too. That's new." 6 months after that, Victoria surprised them again. It was a Saturday morning. They were having breakfast together, a ritual they'd maintained religiously, when Victoria set down a small box on the table. "What's this?" Jason asked. "Open it." Inside was a ring. Not expensive or flashy. Simple gold with a small diamond. "Victoria, I know we started with a contract. I know our first engagement was fake, but I want this one to be real." Victoria's hands trembled slightly. "Jason Cole, will you marry me?" "Actually marry me, not because of contracts or arrangements or public image, but because I love you and I want to spend my life with you and Emily?" Jason couldn't breathe. "Are you serious?" "Completely. Terrifyingly. I've never been more serious about anything." "Yes," Jason said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, absolutely yes," Emily cheered. "Can I be the flower girl?" "You can be whatever you want to be," Victoria said, pulling them both into a hug. "You both can." They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony with only close friends and family. No reporters, no cameras, no performance. Just two people choosing each other over and over again, with a 6-year-old standing between them, promising to love them both forever. Victoria wore a simple white dress. Jason wore a suit he'd picked out himself. Emily wore a purple dress covered in sparkles and declared it the best day of her entire life. In her vows, Victoria said, "I spent 38 years convinced that needing someone was weakness, that asking for help was failure, that love was a liability I couldn't afford. You proved me wrong about everything. You taught me that strength is admitting you're scared, that success is measured in moments, not money, that the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be known." In his vows, Jason said, "You taught me that it's okay to accept help, that letting someone in doesn't mean losing yourself, that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. You showed me that second chances exist, even when you think you've used them all up." Emily's speech, which she insisted on giving, was simple. "I'm glad you guys found each other, even if you did it the weird way with contracts and stuff. Love is love, even when it starts out fake." The whole room laughed, but Emily was right. Love was love, however it started. 2 years later, they adopted a dog, a rescue mutt that Emily named Professor Waffles for reasons no one quite understood. Victoria complained about dog hair on her suits, but Jason caught her letting the dog sleep on her lap during movie nights. 3 years after that, Emily started middle school. She was confident, well-adjusted, and had inherited Victoria's sharp intelligence and Jason's empathy. She told anyone who'd listen that she had two of the best parents in the world, even if they were kind of weird. 5 years after their real wedding, Jason finished his MBA, the one he'd abandoned when Emily was born. Victoria helped him study, quizzing him on concepts she'd mastered decades ago, but explained with patience she'd never had before. 7 years later, Victoria's foundation had helped over 5,000 families. She worked from home 3 days a week and spent the other 2 at the office, a balance she'd never thought possible. 10 years later, Emily was in high school applying to colleges. She wrote her essay about watching 2 people learn to be vulnerable with each other, about how her father and mother, because that's what Victoria was, in every way that mattered, had shown her that it's never too late to become who you're meant to be. On their 10-year anniversary, Jason and Victoria sat on their terrace. Not the penthouse terrace. They'd moved to a house with a yard for Professor Waffles and looked back at the journey that had brought them here. Do you ever regret it? Victoria asked. The contract. How we started. No? Do you? Not even a little. It was the best terrible decision I ever made. Jason laughed. I think that's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. I've said much more romantic things. Have you? Victoria counted on her fingers. I said I loved you before I stepped down from my company. I proposed. I vowed to spend my life with you in front of actual witnesses. Okay, fair. But the best terrible decision line is still pretty good. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from years of knowing someone completely. You know what I realized? Victoria said eventually. What? Marcus was right. At the gala, when he said I had everything except someone who loved me, he was wrong. How so? I didn't have everything. I had an empire built on fear and control and isolation. I had money and power and influence. But I didn't have a life. Victoria took Jason's hand. You gave me that. A life worth living. We gave each other that, Jason corrected. I was drowning when you offered me that contract. Drowning in debt and responsibility and grief I hadn't processed. You threw me a lifeline even if you didn't mean to. So we saved each other. Yeah, I guess we did. Emily came outside, now 17 and somehow both a child and an adult simultaneously. Are you guys being sappy again? Always, Victoria said without shame. Emily rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Well, stop being sappy and help me with my college essay. I'm trying to explain how watching you two taught me about vulnerability, but it's coming out weird. Victoria and Jason exchanged glances. What did we teach you about vulnerability? Jason asked. Emily sat down between them, like she had 1,000 times before. That it's scary but necessary, that you can be strong and still need people, that admitting you're wrong is braver than pretending you're right. She paused. And that sometimes the best things in life start as mistakes. We weren't a mistake, Victoria said. You were a contract that became real. That's kind of like a beautiful mistake. Jason laughed. I can't argue with that. They helped Emily with her essay, the three of them working together like they'd done for a decade. A family built on an unlikely foundation but solid nonetheless, because that's what they'd learned, all three of them. That love doesn't require a perfect beginning, that families can be chosen as much as born, that vulnerability is strength and asking for help is courage, and admitting you need someone is the bravest thing you can do. Victoria had learned that empires built on isolation eventually crumble, but communities built on connection endure. Jason had learned that accepting help doesn't make you weak, and letting someone in doesn't mean losing yourself. Emily had learned that parents aren't perfect, but trying is more important than succeeding. And together, they'd learned that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most unexpected places. From contracts that become real. From transactions that become love. From three people who needed each other more than they knew, finding each other exactly when they needed to be found. Years later, when people asked Victoria about her greatest achievement, she never mentioned her company or her foundation or any of the deals she'd closed. She talked about a 6-year-old girl asking about jellyfish brains, about a man who taught her that breakfast together mattered more than any board meeting, about choosing vulnerability over control and discovering that real power comes from connection, not isolation. She talked about learning, at 38, that it was never too late to become someone new, someone better, someone real. And when people asked Jason what he was most proud of, he didn't talk about finishing his MBA or climbing out of debt or any of the professional successes he'd achieved. He talked about taking a risk on a crazy contract with a woman who didn't know how to love. About watching that woman learn. About building a family from pieces that shouldn't have fit but somehow did. About teaching his daughter that courage looks like admitting you're scared and trying anyway. Because in the end, that's what their story was about. Not about money or contracts or fake engagements that became real, but about three people learning to be brave enough to love each other, imperfectly, messily, completely. And that, they all agreed, was the only kind of love worth having.